Chapter 11:35. The hearts of Do Heping and the others instantly sank with a thump. They were done for. Previously, they had even teamed up to snatch the phoenix egg on the crown princess. When they made their move, how could they have imagined that the crown prince, who loved his wife as much as his life, would rush to the mystic beast forest from the Mo kingdom capital? The crown prince's aura was so powerful that they didn't dare to defy him in the slightest, much less tell him the details. When Prince Mo saw that no one uttered a word and that everyone's eyes were flickering with uncertainty, the uneasiness in his heart grew increasingly intense. Could it be that you people have teamed up to bully the crown princess? As soon as he finished speaking, the pressure on Prince Mo's body surfaced bit by bit, as if about to erupt in the next moment. No, no. How would we dare? Do Heping hurriedly sent a look to a disciple beside him. The latter submissively stepped forward and whispered in a mosquito-like voice, Your Highness, I haven't seen the crown princess before. Prince Mo's deep and cold gaze landed on him as if he was looking at a dead person. Such a terrifying gaze caused the disciple who spoke to start trembling for no reason. An extremely powerful pressure spread out like a cold mist, pressing down on everyone present like a mountain. Even Simon Manor's high priest's breathing also stopped, and he looked at that slender man who was like jade and bamboo in disbelief. What a powerful divine sense pressure did in front of him. It was as if everyone was a bunch of ants, unable to raise their heads at all. Everyone was drenched in cold sweat. Some of the weaker cultivators had already been crushed by this terrifying pressure and were forced to kneel on the ground. You dare to lie in front of us? The crown prince didn't move much, but he had already arrived at that disciple's side in a breath's time. He picked him up from the ground and clutched his neck, causing his neck bones to creak and snap. The Do family disciple's eyes suddenly bulged, and he opened his mouth to gasp for breath. Do Heping's gaze contracted. Second young Master Do clenched his fists tightly, forcibly resisting this pressure. With every step he took, he felt the pressure on his body increase by a bit. It was as if it wanted to completely crush him. Second young Master Do held his breath with great difficulty as he walked in front of Prince Mo. He hastily bowed in a very stiff manner, Your Highness, please do not be angry. This disciple does not know the crown princess, so it is understandable that he does not know the details. Actually, the crown princess just passed by here. If Your Highness chases after her now, you should still be able to make it in time. Second young Master Do struggled to explain under the pressure. Where? Prince Mo's dark phoenix eyes lit up. He did not know what had happened to Jojo. Jojo did not communicate with him through the jade talisman. He could only feel a faint aura, but he could not pinpoint the exact location. He felt a deep sense of unease in his heart. He shouldn't have let her come to this mystic beast forest alone. The crown princess went that way. Second Do pointed in a direction. Prince Mo moved towards the depths of the forest with a whoosh. Seeing his speed, second young Master Do's gaze involuntarily contracted, and he hastily said, Your Highness, please be careful. The crown princess seems to have suffered a chi deviation. Prince Mo's phoenix eyes were slightly startled, and he paused. Someone come. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Thousands of figures as fast as the wind instantly landed around him. Chapter 11:36. Everyone's hearts trembled when they saw this, and they all subconsciously retreated a few steps. The Eastern Palace had mobilized so many hidden guards. Did they want to kill someone? Huifeng, take 2,000 men and use this place as the center. dig 3 feet into the ground and search within 3 kilometers. There should be something abnormal underground, Moen ordered coldly. Abnormal situation? What abnormal situation? What else could there be underground? Everyone's gazes flickered as they looked at the crown prince. Family head Do, family head Mu, and Siming Manor's high priest all silently exchanged glances before retracting their pensive gazes. Only Huifeng knew that the crown prince was referring to something like an underground village. The crown prince suspected that there was an underground village cultivation base here. Yes, Your Highness. Huifeng accepted the order. The rest of you, follow this monarch to find the crown princess. Moen coldly tossed out these words as her frosty gaze swept over everyone present. Then, her figure darted into the forest. It wasn't until her figure completely disappeared that everyone couldn't help but exhale softly. Just now, the pressure that the crown prince gave them was truly too heavy. When he was present, everyone's breathing had clearly slowed and lowered. This kind of invisible deterrence was simply suffocating. In particular, the look that the crown prince gave them before he left caused everyone's hearts to skip a beat. What did that mean? It was clearly, this monarch will remember all of you. So scary. Could it be that this great crown prince still wanted to retaliate against them afterward? The family heads all felt insecure and thought that they had to keep a close eye on their properties after they returned to avoid suffering from So and So's evil schemes. Moreover, this mystic beast forest was extremely large. The direction that second Do had casually pointed in was actually slightly off. A slight difference could lead to a great loss, and the direction that the crown prince chased in was slightly different from Miss Qiao's. It wasn't that second Do did it on purpose. In truth, he had only seen Miss Qiao being taken away by the Raksha princess and had only taken a cursory glance. This forest was filled with many different types of trees, and it was like a large-scale maze. Who knew where the person would run to after taking a random turn? At this time, the Raksha princess, who was about to attack Xiaomu, clutched her broken wrist with a contorted expression as she glared viciously at that person who had suddenly appeared. Ding Yun, you're treating me like this for this little girl? Princess Luosha screamed, clutching her wrist. Cult Master Ding was simply annoyed to death by this old woman. She was already in her 50s, yet she dressed up like a little girl all day long. Most importantly, she still had special thoughts about him. Is this appropriate? Come on, he really couldn't eat such an old pheasant. He really wanted to ask this old princess what she saw in him. Why couldn't he change? When Qing Wan rushed over, she originally thought that she and the others were one step too late, and that the little master whom everyone missed so much might be in trouble. Who knew, the little master sat there meditating as if there was no one else around. Instead, he saw a man and a woman fighting fiercely. Even if Princess Luosha was at her peak, her cultivation was still slightly lower than Cult Master Ding's. Moreover, her conscience had suffered a blow earlier, so it was very strenuous for her to fight now. After exchanging several moves, cult leader Ding saw an opening and without the slightest bit of mercy, he flew up and struck heavily on the pit of her stomach from a distance. Princess Luosha rolled into the forest like a sparrow hawk with its string cut. Chapter 1137. Cough, cough, cough. The Raksha princess clutched her chest with a dark expression and crawled up from the ground while clutching her broken wrist. Coughing heavily, she glared at Cult Master Ding with unwillingness and resentment. Ding Yun, you actually injured me for this slut? Have you already forgotten about our friendship over the years? Cult Master Ding's face darkened. When did this seat ever have the slightest bit of friendship with you? Hadn't they just met once several years ago, and this Raksha princess had already become infatuated with him and fallen head over heels in love with him? In this past year, he had indeed been bored to death, so bored that he had nothing to play with. Thus, he killed that snake beauty and used himself as her substitute to sneak into their Raksha ghost sect's lair to play around. This game really allowed him to pry into some of the Raksha ghost sect's secrets, and he knew that there might be another master behind this old woman. However, he had used the snake beauty's identity to hide by her side. This old woman had no idea at all. She couldn't even recognize his true body, so what bullshit friendship was there to talk about, heh heh. As expected, you forgot everything. The Raksha princess's eyes brimmed with tears as she glanced at him resentfully. What did I forget? Cult Master Ding was baffled and impatient. He leaped forward and raised his palm. If you don't scram, don't blame me for being merciless. The Raksha princess knew that this heartless man was a man of his words. If she didn't leave now, she would inevitably fall into his vicious hands. She couldn't beat him now, and she was injured all over, so it was best to retreat first. The Raksha princess turned around and glanced at that man faintly. Cult Master Ding's hair stood on end, and he was about to slap her again when he saw the Raksha princess turn around with sparkling tears in her eyes. She dragged her feet and left without another word. Cult Master Ding didn't chase after her and couldn't be bothered to look at this old woman. The Raksha princess had just dragged her injured body a few steps when she suddenly saw a green-robed figure appear in front of her. When that person turned around and revealed the iron ghost mask on his face, the Raksha princess couldn't help but tremble all over. Arbor seemed to have sensed something and frowned slightly. He slowly withdrew from the state of cultivation and opened his eyes. Upon seeing this, Cult Master Ding hurriedly flashed in front of her. Little girl, what are you cultivating here for? The mystic energy here isn't dense enough. He looked at her with a smile, only to see that the little girl's face was stoic. Her gaze seemed to fall on his face, but it was as if she couldn't see anything. Her gaze was unfocused. Cult Master Ding was immediately shocked. He stretched out his hand and waved it in front of her. His expression suddenly changed, and he rushed forward to ask, "What happened to your eyes? Who did this to you? Don't make a fuss." Qing Wan flew over and swept a glance at Cult Master Ding. She said in a proud tone, "My little master can't see or hear what you're saying. All right, you can leave now. Don't disturb our little master's cultivation, or she'll kill you." Cult Master Ding, What's there to be proud of if you can't see or hear? I do know that there's a secret cultivation ground with dense mystic energy in the Mystic Beast Forest. Cult Master Ding's gaze flickered, and he continued, "Do you want to bring her there?" Qing Wan thought carefully, then ran to Arbor and gestured with her hands. Little Master was so miserable because of this disaster-courting talisman, so she naturally had to cultivate until she could recoup her losses. Only then would she not have lived such a miserable life in vain. Chapter 1138. Cult Master Ding was a bit speechless as he watched from the side. Could the little fellow understand this pantomime of gesturing? He pursed his lips, and a faint light flashed through his alluring eyes. However, this was also good. The longer the little fellow was delayed here, the more likely that Mo Yen would be dead by the time she returned. What bullshit crown princess title would naturally cease to exist, hee. The egg also sneered at the side. You damn green bird, do you think she can understand just by gesturing like this? She's just a little fool right now. You're the fool. You've been a fool for 8 lifetimes. Qing Wan and the little white squirrel turned around at the same time and roared at him as if they were enemies. Egg, wait until our little mistress wakes up, she'll definitely take care of you. Just you wait. The little white squirrel snorted. What egg? Who's an egg? I already said that I'm a blood fire god. Blood fire my ass, you're just an egg. Qing Wan and the little white squirrel both turned their faces away in disdain. At this time, Arbor already reacted and walked to Cult Master Ding's side with small steps. Cult Master Ding smiled enchantingly and went forward to pull Arbor's little hand. Look at you, you're so wooden-brained. I'll call you Lil Blockhead from now on. Lil Blockhead very rudely threw away his hand and instinctively reached out to pat his sleeve that was hooked by him. His disdain was evident in his words. Ah ha 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 ha. The egg laughed. He finally found a human that the little girl disliked more than him. This allowed the egg to regain a bit of confidence. See, this great god isn't the one that the little girl dislikes the most. In the next second, the wildly laughing egg was sucked into Arbor's inner world. Damn girl, let me out! The Bloodfire Phoenix egg angrily shouted in her mind. Contracted mystic beasts could communicate with their masters in their spiritual consciousness. The little fat squirrel laughed until he fell and couldn't help but poke at him. Master dislikes you, dislikes you. Arbor reached out and summoned Qing Wan and the little squirrel back into his inner world at the same time. Only then did he turn his head to look at Cult Master Ding. His meaning was self-evident. Lead the way. She didn't expect that the beasts that were randomly gesturing could really communicate with her perfectly. Cult Master Ding raised his hand to touch his chin and nodded repeatedly. Okay. Okay, okay. I'll take you there. After saying that, his hand tried to caress her small hand again, but was decisively rejected again. Sigh. Cult Master Ding sighed. The little girl was rejecting him out of instinct. How to break it? If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have captured her mother back then and used himself as her substitute. Look at how much the little girl disliked him now. Ding! Brother Ding! Suddenly, a timid voice came from the forest. Ding Yun was slightly taken aback. He turned his head and saw Xinu, her standing not too far away. She was biting her lower lip lightly and looking at him with a faint gaze. Cult Master Ding shuddered all over for no reason. Xinu, her, was originally his mother's adopted daughter. He didn't know why she suddenly became his fiancée a few years ago. When the manor announced it to the outside world, he almost thought that he was hallucinating at first. Only after confirming it again and again did he realize that his mother was actually serious. How terrifying! He was just a wanderer of the Jianghu. Did he need such a terrifying thing like a fiancé? He didn't need it at all. For the past 2 years, every time Xinu, her, saw him, she would use this kind of, "you betrayed me," expression. She would stare at him foolishly. It really made all the hair on his body stand on end. Chapter 1139. What did you come here for? Ding Yun reflexively took a step back, cowardly hiding behind Xiaomu. Arbor was expressionless. She only saw the human-shaped stake in front of her and had no idea what they were doing. Big Brother Ding, you promised Mother that you would return to the manor this month. The corners of Xinu's mouth drooped slightly, and she unconsciously clenched her fists tightly. I did promise, but this month isn't over yet. It's the same if I go back at the end of the month. Ding Yun waved his hand impatiently. All right, stop lecturing me. Hurry back to the manor. This isn't a place you can come to. This place is dangerous at every step. With your strength, you really aren't qualified to stay here for long. Arbor suddenly turned around and furrowed her slender brows. She stretched out her little paw and tugged hard at Ding Yun's sleeve. Hurry up and leave. Go cultivate. You're so long-winded like an old man. All right. We'll go right away. Cult Master Ding's sullen and impatient expression immediately swept away, and he grabbed her little hand with a smile. However, slap. Arbor's small, expressionless face was taut. She once again used facts to prove that she disliked him from the bottom of her heart. Cult Master Ding's mouth twitched, and he settled for the next best thing, grabbing her sleeve. I'll hold your hand. It'll be faster this way. Big Brother Ding. Xinu, her's entire body trembled slightly, and she looked at Ding Yun and Arbor in disbelief. Have you forgotten what Mother told you? Have you thrown Mother's teachings to the 9 heavens? Xinu asked in a trembling voice. Xinu, Ding Yun's face was cold and angry, and his tone was somewhat irritated as he said, I haven't forgotten a single word Mother said. Can I trouble you to stop lecturing me? Was this lecturing? This was a matter of life and death. She was concerned about him. Xinu's tears welled up, and she closed her eyes. When she opened them again, a trace of determination flashed through her eyes. Bring young master back to the manor. Yes. 2 men in black appeared behind Xinu, and they cupped their fists at Ding Yun. Young master, please follow us back to the manor. Ding Yun sneered, you want to keep me here with just the likes of you? Big Brother Ding, if Mother knew that you had feelings for this little girl, she would definitely bring you back at all costs. What nonsense are you spouting? Cult Master Ding's expression changed slightly as he stared at Xinu. When have I ever had any strange thoughts about her? All of this is just your imagination. Go back. Ding Yun rebuked angrily. All right. Since you say you don't have any thoughts, then kill her right now. Xinu signaled with her eyes, and the 2 manor guards immediately stepped forward. Cult Master Ding was both shocked and furious. He subconsciously blocked in front of Arbor. You dare! Xinu suddenly took a step forward and almost bumped into Ding Yun's body. You're not tempted? No? Do you think Mother would let this scourge stay if she knew? All the decisions that Mother makes will only benefit you the most. For the past 20 years, this has never changed from beginning to end. Why don't you listen to her? Big Brother Ding, don't be willful and act rashly. Xinu coldly shouted, bring young master back. Yes. Without waiting for the 2 manor guards to step forward, Ding Yun suddenly launched an attack. 2 mystic energies flew out of thin air, and at the same time forcing the 2 to retreat, he couldn't care about anything else. He pulled Arbor over, and with a whoosh, he ran away. Young master! A young girl in a pink dress exclaimed. Chapter 1140. Ding Yun dragged Arbor and glided over the forest at an extremely fast speed. Young master! A young girl in a pink dress couldn't help but cry out in alarm. Xinu's body swayed slightly as she stared faintly in the direction the 2 people left in, softly muttering something to herself. Young miss, young master ran away again. Why didn't you chase after him? The little girl in the pink dress quickly walked to her side and called out. Only when she got closer did she hear young Mrs. murmur. "We can't chase after him, we can't chase after him." Xinu, her tears streamed down her face. "He seems to be merciful in all aspects, but he's actually a heartless and emotionless person." Just now, she pretended to order someone to kill the girl beside him and tested him. Looking at his abrupt change in expression just now, that was called a mixture of shock and anger. For so many years in the past, this man seemed to wear a natural mask even when facing his own mother. Although he had a smiling appearance all day long, in reality, he had an expression that was neither sad nor happy. Xinu, her thought that this person's temperament was naturally extremely cold, but it turned out that wasn't the case. He would also be angry and would stand in front of others to stare at her with a man-eating gaze and roar, "You dare!" Xinu squatted on the ground dejectedly, causing Bao Yan, the maidservant in pink, to anxiously circle around her. "Young miss, say something. What's going on? Who is that girl beside young master?" Seeing that Xinu didn't move for a long time, the impatient Bao Yan anxiously stomped her feet. All right. If you're not going to look for her, I'll go look for young master." After saying that, she turned around and dived into the forest again, disappearing without a trace in a flash. Xinu cried for a while before taking out a pen and paper and hastily writing a letter and handing it to her two subordinates. "Quickly return to the manor and personally hand this letter to old madam." "Yes." The two manor guards didn't dare to delay and hurriedly cupped their fists to receive the letter before turning to leave in a hurry. On the other side, Emolian paused her steps and turned to look at the gloomy forest path with a slight frown. She had no idea where Jojo had run off to. Earlier, she could still feel a faint trace of her aura, but now, a soft sound was heard from the underbrush, and a head suddenly popped out. The two hidden guards behind the crown prince quickly moved forward and suppressed the other party with one move. They pulled the girl out from the bushes. The strength of their hands was not weak. Hey, softer, softer, softer." Sikong Fuling hurriedly called out. Emolien's expression changed slightly, and she landed beside her with a swoosh. She unfurled a silk scroll in her hand and asked coldly, "Have you seen this little girl?" Sikong Fuling, who was being escorted by two hidden guards, cast a sidelong glance at that painting. On the drawn paper, although the little girl's face was expressionless, the lively smile in her eyes was completely embellished. It could be seen that the person who drew this painting rather hoped that this stoic face would smile frequently. Sikong Fuling's eyes turned slightly before she shook her head and replied seriously, "Never seen him before." This unknown wild man in front of her didn't lose out to her older brother in terms of looks, temperament, and appearance. He couldn't be having an affair with the little girl, right? Emolien's icy gaze flickered slightly. The hidden guard's sword slashed toward Sikong Fuling's face. "If you don't speak, I'll disfigure your little face." Sikong Fuling's eyes bulged, and she shrieked with a pale face, Hey. Chapter 1141. You're so unreasonable. Do I deserve to die just because I haven't seen this young lady before? Sikong Fuling glared at Emolian while blowing her beard. Her eyes swiveled as she said, "You look like a decent person, but why are you so heartless? You don't even have the slightest bit of tender feelings for girls." The hidden guard at the side twitched his mouth slightly. "Do it," Emolian icily instructed. Seeing that the blade in the hidden guard's hand was about to leave a bloody mark on Sikong Fuling's face, Sikong Fuling immediately panicked and hurriedly shouted, "Hey, hey, hey! Stop, 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 stop! Hey, I say, handsome lord, what exactly do you want to know? I already told you that I really don't know her and have never seen her before." What a joke! She already knew that her elder brother was a little interested in this young lady, so of course she wouldn't trick her elder brother into helping an outsider. Humph humph, she wouldn't say it even if she knew. "You're lying." Emolien's voice sounded as though it had been scooped up from the depths of hell as it was unusually cold. "You have her scent on you." His gaze landed on this young lady in front of him, deep and frosty to the extreme. This young lady didn't seem to be a member of an orthodox sect. Her thin muslin dress had been scraped around in the forest overgrown with dead trees, and it had already become very messy by now. Even though she was wearing an outer garment, it couldn't conceal the fair skin underneath. "Sikong Fuling. Take it away, take it away." Sikong Fuling pursed her small mouth and forcefully slapped away the two hidden guards' hands. She shook her body and straightened her collar as she muttered, "It's not like you have a dog's nose. Why are you so sensitive? Insolence!" The hidden guards glared angrily as they berated in unison. Sikong Fuling jumped in fright and hurriedly patted her chest with her small hand as she whined coquettishly, "Why are you so fierce? All right, I'll tell you." Her eyes swiveled again as she suppressed the crafty glint in her eyes and said unwillingly, "Yes, I've seen that young lady. However, we've already parted ways. You've also seen it now, I'm alone." "Where did she go?" Emolian questioned. "How would I know where she went?" Sikong Fuling rolled her eyes and cried out, "That young lady was ice cold and didn't say a word for half a day. When she left, she didn't even tell me. How would I know where she went? That wretched girl had caused her to wander around the forest in search of her. She was even afraid that she would starve to death. Just thinking about it made her angry. Since when did she, Sikong Fuling, have such rotten good intentions?" Emolian raised her hand slightly, and several hidden guards immediately rushed up to restrain Sikong Fuling. "Let's go." "Leave, your sister." Sikong Fuling cried out angrily, "What are you doing? What's the point of capturing me? Even if you catch me, I won't be able to make the little girl appear. Hey, 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 it hurts. My hand hurts. Stop pulling. What the fuck, this lunatic." Just because she had come into contact with the little girl before, how crazy was she? "Lead the way. Lead the way. Brothers. I really don't know where she is." Sikong Fuling cried out in exasperation. "Let go. I'm warning you. If you don't let go, I won't be courteous anymore." A hidden guard unceremoniously slapped the back of her head. "Let's go." Sikong Fuling still wanted to resist, but she was forcefully pushed and pulled by several hidden guards, and her hands were shackled with mystic energy locking shackles. Chapter 1142. Tsuewe Mountain. Mountain ranges stacked on top of each other, stretching on endlessly. Carefree Valley was located at the bottom of Tsuewe Mountain and was covered by miasma all year round. Ordinary people could not get close. The ingenious part of Beijing Manor was that it was located in the center of Carefree Valley and was surrounded by a green lake. The manor was covered with exotic flowers and plants. Everywhere was lush and beautiful. The old madam of Beijing Manor, Ding Xian, was a great beauty whose name was known throughout the pugilistic world when she was young. The most commonly accepted legend about her was that she was hurt by love. It was said that she had once chased after the young master of the mermaid race. Who would have thought that the young hero's heart already belonged to someone else? In the end, she was trapped by love and deeply hurt, so she hid from the world and refused to see anyone. A few years later, the rumors became even more outrageous. It was said that after she was hurt by love, she casually found someone to marry. After she became pregnant, she personally killed her husband and gave birth to the young master of Beijing Manor, Ding Yun. After that family found out that their son had died an unnatural death, they launched an attack on Carefree Valley more than 10 years ago. The ending was very tragic. Hundreds of people in the family were all massacred by Beijing Manor overnight. There were even more exaggerated rumors that Ding Xian actually gave birth to twins at that time, but only one young master, Ding Yun, was announced to the public. The reason was that when the two children were 10 years old, she made them kill each other. The one who survived was the young master, and the one who died was thrown out of the valley to feed the wolves. From then on, Beijing Manor was demonized. Although it was one of the 4 great manors, it had long been removed from the ranks of the righteous path. The sun was setting in the west, and the setting sun was setting. In the pavilion in the middle of the lake sat an old monk with a white beard and white eyebrows. In front of him was a cup of high-quality tea that was emitting light smoke. 2 maidservants stood on both sides of him until a cough slowly sounded. "Madam." Ding Xian waved to the 2 maidservants, and the 2 maidservants bowed and retreated out of the pavilion. Cough, cough, cough. Ding Xian was more than 50 years old. Her cheeks were thin, and her wrinkled face was full of vicissitudes of life. She leaned on a walking stick carved from black sandalwood and slowly sat down in front of the old monk. She smiled and said, "Master, sorry to keep you waiting." The old monk stroked his beard and smiled. "Madam's body is better." Cough, cough, cough. Ding Xian chuckled. "It's been over 10 years. After taking the medicine that Grand Master gave me, my condition has improved." The old monk nodded with a smile. "Master, you came a few days earlier than the scheduled date. Is there anything else you need to do?" "Madam, do you still remember the divination I performed for young Master Ding 15 years ago?" "Of course." Ding Xian nodded solemnly. This old monk observed the stars last night and discovered that young Master's fated star faintly emitted a fiendish red aura. Ding Xian was slightly surprised. "Do you know what it is?" "The red light is binding the fated star, indicating that the young master has already fallen into the tribulation of love." The old monk said softly. "Love tribulation?" Ding Xian was shocked. She shook her head and said, "Impossible. All these years, Yun-er's natural disposition has been undisciplined and free. She has never been reluctant to part with any woman. How could she have fallen in love? I don't really believe it either." Although this old monk has jumped out of the secular world, I have often heard news of young Master Ding's adventures. Ever since I received Great Master's advice 15 years ago, I've been very careful. There are only a few old maidservants in the manor. Yun-er doesn't like any of them. Could it be that in the years when young Master Ding went out to establish the demonic sect? Chapter 1143. You mean that Xikong falling by his side? Ding Xian shook her head. That's even more impossible. For Yun-er's safety, I've investigated every single one of his female subordinates, Ding Xian said with certainty. This madam has investigated that Saintess Xikong Fuling. She has always treated her as an elder brother and nothing else. Her only sees her as a younger sister. As for those other female subordinates, they're even less worth mentioning. A few of them had designs on her, but after her discovered them, they were all personally executed by him. Her son had always been such a heartless child since he was young. Don't be fooled by how he laughed and joked with others all day long, as if he was very happy. In reality, he was abnormally cold and indifferent. He didn't even have the slightest bit of affection for his own mother. As a result, the number of times he returned home these past few years had gradually decreased. If she hadn't sent people to call him back again and again, he probably wouldn't have thought of returning home to visit his mother for several years. The old monk sighed and said, but the matter that this old monk has been worried about for more than 10 years still happened in the end. Madam, the most important thing right now is to find this person as soon as possible so that we can think of a way to resolve it. He has suffered enough. It's also my fault. When I was pregnant with him, I made him suffer so much and even almost caused him to die. I don't want him to experience any more tribulations or difficulties. Master, you must help me, you must help me. Cough, cough, cough. Madam, please rest assured. The old manor lord of Beijing Manor has always been this old monk's old friend. This old monk will definitely not disappoint his old friend. Ding Xian lightly bit her lip and nodded. Many thanks, Master. This child should have lived like a prince for his entire life, but he was born with such a bitter fate. It's me who harmed him, it's me. If he had listened to my father back then, he wouldn't have come to this stage today. Now it's also as Master's divination. If the love tribulation isn't removed, he will definitely suffer for all his lifetimes. Ding Xian softly murmured, Master, I don't want to be like this. I only wish for my child to be safe and happy. Is this too much? Madam, eldest miss sent a letter back. A middle-aged female servant in green clothes quickly walked to the pavilion and said. When Ding Xian heard the servant mention Xinu, her expression softened. Bring the letter in. This child, was the daughter-in-law candidate she had personally chosen because she was very clear that did not like her. With such a daughter-in-law, was safe. He would never be moved by Xinu, so naturally, he would not deal with that troublesome love tribulation. Speaking of which, the reason why her son couldn't fall in love with anyone was entirely because of her. It was her fault, but she couldn't make up for it now that she knew that she was selfish and sacrificed her for her. However, she had previously told about this matter, letting her clearly know that her's life would be in danger after falling in love. Her had to choose whether to marry or not. Xinu personally agreed and didn't care much about that. That was why the marriage was finalized a few years ago. Beijing Manor always had its own special communication channel, so letters were exchanged very quickly. Ding Xian recalled that had left for 2 days and probably had something to report, so she hurriedly opened the letter to take a look. She jumped up and shouted with a stern expression, Men, summon 2 Beitan enforcers to head to the Mystic Beast Forest and kill that woman by young Lord's side. Chapter 1144. 2 days later. Arbor opened her eyes, a hint of dissatisfaction in her heart. The barrier to the peak of level 13 was clearly within reach, but no matter how long she cultivated, she still couldn't break through it. If she was still sensible in the past, she would definitely understand that cultivating so impatiently was actually not a good thing. But now, in just a few short days, she had absorbed only 1/5 of the essence soil. This was really too fast. Cult Master Ding walked over with a pile of fruits. Seeing her open her eyes, his eyes couldn't help but light up. "Little blockhead, you've finished cultivating." Arbor blinked, her gaze following him back and forth. Seeing him holding a large pile of colorful little fruits, she couldn't help but stand up and trot to his side. While she was at it, she snatched a few fruits from his hands and subconsciously stuffed them into her mouth. Cult Master Ding stared blankly, then waved his hand in front of her eyes in surprise. "Your eyes are better." Arbor ignored him. Cult Master Ding saw that she had eaten a few fruits, so he thought that the fruits he picked up tasted pretty good. So he also grabbed 2 fruits and threw them into his mouth, then afterwards, he spat it out with a pa, pa, pa. His handsome face completely scrunched up, and he looked at Xiaomu in disbelief. "You! It's so sour, don't eat it." As he spoke, he quickly slapped away the fruits in her hands. How can this be eaten? This child was too careless. It was so sour, but she could still eat it so calmly. She was simply too amazing. Xiaomu's jet black eyes rolled slightly before she looked away. She turned around and pattered away, about to open up a path. Cult Master Ding hurriedly grabbed her sleeve and said with a stifled expression, "How about this? I'll take you to the city to eat good food, okay?" Xiaomu flung away his hand that was grabbing her sleeve and crisply patted away the non-existent dust on her sleeve. Just as she was about to turn around and leave, her brows suddenly twitched, and an austere aura directly pounced at her, so fast that it was unimaginable. Arbor instinctively flipped to the side and dodged the fatal strike. He leaped lightly and landed beside Ding Yun. Ding Yun was shocked. His body quickly moved, and he was already in front of Arbor. He glared angrily at the 2 elders who suddenly came out of the forest. "North Altar Protector, what are you 2 doing?" "Young lord, sorry for the offense." One of the old men shouted angrily and flew forward to grab Ding Yun. The other person stepped forward, and a thick wave of profound energy was attached to it. He once again attacked Arbor. Arbor turned her body and was about to jump away when she saw a pair of blood-red scissors coming towards her. It was aimed at her wrist, and with a "kacha" sound, the scissors cut. The profound artifact was very powerful. It cut off a piece of her sleeve from her wrist in a single move. If she hadn't retracted her hand quickly, that thing would have cut off her fair and tender wrist. Bang! Arbor gave a side kick, hitting the back of the old man's hand. Her body moved back a bit, and she nimbly stepped on the withered bushes. With a flash, she appeared behind the old man. A black ferrule suddenly appeared in her hand, and with a surge of profound energy, she abruptly struck the back of the old man's head. The old man quickly opened a defensive barrier and turned around to block with the large scissors. But with a clang, Arbor's wrist was actually shaken by that pair of scissors until it ached, and she took a step back. "Elder Han, stop!" Ding Yun's gaze shrunk, and he suddenly wanted to sweep away the protector who was pestering him like a madman. Chapter 1145. Young master, don't be so obstinate. Let Elder Han kill this woman, and you come back with us. No. Ding Yun was very anxious. He was very clear about the cultivation levels of these 2 old ghosts. That was the suppressed cultivation of a level 4 spiritual master. Lil Wood was definitely not Elder Hang's match. "I'll go with you." "Let her go!" Ding Yun shouted angrily. "Let her go!" Elder Hun, who was holding the large scissors, shook his head. "I'm sorry, young master. This is Madam's order. Today, this old man must leave this woman's life here." After saying this, Elder Hun stepped up the attack in his hands. The large scissors flipped up and down, and with a fierce force, directly cut towards Arbor's small neck. Arbor turned around 4 or 5 times, frowning in displeasure. She coldly looked at the large scissors pointed at her throat. Clang! Her small jade-white hand came in contact with the large scissors, and there was a metallic spark. The old man was suddenly shocked, and his eyes widened in disbelief. How can this be? This woman could actually collide with his mystic weapon with her bare hands. While he was thinking, Arbor slapped away the scissors with her ferrule. She raised her hand, and 3 hexagonal snowflakes flew out. Bang, bang. They cut 2 trees beside the old man, and the upper half of the trees directly fell down. Seeing that it was about to fall on the old man, Elder Hun suddenly threw out a palm, and directly smashed the fallen tree into pieces. "I really underestimated you." In a split second, wisps of spiritual energy fluctuated from the elder's body, and his level 4 spiritual cultivator cultivation surged inch by inch. He abruptly stretched out a withered black claw to grab Xiao Mu's shoulder. When the old man who was holding Ding Yun saw this, a trace of ruthlessness flashed across his brows. He suddenly jumped up, and threw a sword from Arbor's back, directly approaching. 2 enforcers. Cult Master Ding looked at the scene in front of him with fear. His body moved faster than his brain, and in an instant, he pounced towards Arbor. He suddenly grabbed Arbor's small body and turned her around to press her down. One of the protectors didn't have time to pull back his sword, and with a rip, a bloody wound appeared on Cult Master Ding's back. Elder Hang's gaze slightly shrank, almost immediately rushing forward to check his injuries. "Young master." The other person also hurriedly withdrew his sword and bent forward in fear. "Young master, how are you?" Ding Yun lay there with his face down and did not move for a long time. The 2 enforcers were anxious to death. One of them reached out to help him turn around, while the other lowered his head and hurriedly called out, "Young master, young master." A cold light suddenly flashed through the depths of Ding Yun's eyes, which were covered by his hair. His hands suddenly burst out with spiritual light as he punched the waist of the 2 enforcers with his left and right fists. Crack! 2 crisp sounds of bones cracking could be heard. The eyes of the 2 old guardians were wide open as they were hit in the waist and abdomen by the fist wind. Their entire body flew back horizontally and fell heavily to the ground with a bang. They completely didn't expect that their young master would suddenly attack them. After Ding Yun's attack succeeded, he quickly stood up. He kicked with the tip of his foot and picked up the sword that one of the enforcers dropped. Without blinking, the sword's light exploded and suddenly slid past the necks of the 2 enforcers. 2 extremely thin lines of blood appeared on the necks of the 2 North Altar enforcers. Until they died, their dead fish eyes were wide open in anger, completely unable to understand why their young master would kill them. Chapter 1146. Disregarding the injury on his back, Ding Yun hastily walked to Arbor's side and grabbed her hand. "Let's go." She probably didn't just send these 2 people. However, as soon as he moved, he couldn't help but lean heavily against a nearby tree. He only barely managed to steady himself by holding on to the tree. The little girl flung his hand away and expressionlessly glanced at him. Cult Master Ding could only turn to look at her with a wry smile. Suddenly, the little fellow pattered to his side and tapped two of his acupoints with her fingers. Then, she very instinctively took out a bottle of medicinal powder and poured a bit onto the wound on his back. Afterwards, with a smack, her little hand heavily pressed against the wound on his back. Who knew what kind of ointment she had stuck on his wound? The blood on his back immediately stopped flowing, and the wound caused by mystic energy didn't hurt as much as before. Cult Master Ding tugged at the corner of his mouth and forced a smile at the little girl. "I'm fine. We have to leave this place as soon as possible. Let's go." He understood his mother's methods too well. She probably wouldn't feel at ease even if he thought about it and would probably bring people here to personally execute Lil Blockhead. Swish swish swish, heavenly law's invisible bindings swiftly wrapped around Cult Master Ding's limbs and firmly fixed him in place. A harsh glint flashed through Ding Yun's eyes. He abruptly flung his hand and grabbed Arbor. He leaped into the air and swiftly broke free of heavenly law's bindings. However, his complexion paled even more, and his breathing was slightly hurried. How could heavenly law let off someone who recklessly used spiritual energy in the lower star domain like this? Invisible chains chased after Ding Yun at high speed. Ding Yun dodged while dragging Arbor through the forest. In the blink of an eye, the two figures were already far away. Crown Prince Mo raised his head slightly in interest. He saw several crows that had shed their feathers cawing as they flew past the treetop before flapping their wings and flying away. "Your Highness, we found an underground base 5 kilometers to the southeast." Huifun's expression was a bit excited. "It looks quite large. Does your Highness want to go take a look?" Mo Lian glanced into the distance again before nodding slightly and following Huifeng toward the southeast. In an abandoned hut outside the Mystic Beast Forest. At this moment, the Raksha princess was kneeling in front of a man with a metal demon mask, trembling all over. She didn't even dare to raise her head. His nose was bruised and his face was swollen. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. It seemed like he had been severely beaten up just now. "Idiot! For your selfishness, you exposed our underground base and even caused us to suffer such a huge loss. You don't deserve to die." The middle-aged man was furious. He suddenly stomped on Princess Luosha's body. The Raksha princess fell to the ground and curled into a ball. She trembled as she cried out, "Hall Master, please spare me. Please spare me. Master's plan has been completely ruined by you, stupid woman." The man with the iron demon mask suddenly stepped forward, squatted down, put one hand on his knee, and grabbed Princess Raksha's hair with the other. "Take everyone and leave the base immediately." Princess Luosha's pupils constricted. "Master, you mean to give up on this base?" This was the second largest base in the organization. Were they going to give it up so easily? Slap! The middle-aged man slapped her. "What else can we do? The Crown Prince's men are about to search this place." "It's too late, Hall Master. Their men have already arrived." "Burn! Burn it all!" A cold glint flashed through the middle-aged man's eyes. Chapter 1147. Huifeng gloomily directed the hidden guards to put out the fire. However, this underground fire burned abnormally fast, and several explosions could be heard in the distance. Mo Lian frowned and reached out to stop him. "No need to search. Let's go." The opponent didn't seem to be simple. Of course, if not for this, they wouldn't have been able to secretly operate so many underground bases without being discovered. Your Highness, we can still search quickly. There's no need. Since they've already given up on this place, they won't leave any clues here, Mo said indifferently. Let's go. The most important thing is to find the crown princess and bring her back. Mo imperceptibly creased her brows. Could it be that the little fellow had missed him and returned to the Mo Kingdom capital by herself first? He couldn't calm himself down. He kept having the feeling that something bad had happened. My Lian's section break, 2 days later, on the bustling streets of Guanlan City. Sir, I finally found you. A little girl with a rosy pink face and an extremely tender face panted as she caught up to an enchanting man in purple. She panted as she looked at him joyfully. Ding Yun looked at her with an unsightly expression. How did you find me? Beijing Manor's method of finding people was a bit special. Ding Yun was worried that Bao Yan, this girl, had exposed his whereabouts and lured his mother's group over. Bao Yan quickly waved her hand cleverly and said, I didn't inform Madam. Sir, I only saw you twice in the forest, but you ignored me when I called out to you. I chased after you the entire way before finally catching up. Cult Master Ding stopped, his figure swaying a couple of times in exhaustion. In order to break free of that damn heavenly law's restraints these 2 days, he had expended quite a bit of effort. This damn heavenly law was truly a dog trying to catch mice, meddling in other people's business. It was like gangrene attached to his bones the entire way, refusing to let go. It was so annoying that he was about to be annoyed to death. Fortunately, he had finally broken free for the time being. It seemed like he still had to be careful when using spiritual energy in the future. Sir. The little girl Bao Yan hastily went up to support his arm, looking over worriedly. You used your spiritual energy, didn't you? You promised old madam that you wouldn't use your spiritual power casually in the outside world. I'm fine. Cult Master Ding indifferently brushed away the girl's arm and frowned slightly. All right, go back to the manor first. Why, young master, don't you want to go back with me? Ding Yun shook his head. I'm not going back for now. You can go. Remember not to tell anyone about my whereabouts. I'm not leaving. Bao Yan stomped her feet and shouted, I finally found young master. I'm not going anywhere. I'll just follow you. You! Young master, why don't you go back? You haven't returned to the manor for more than 2 years. Madam misses you very much. Why are you asking so many questions? Cult Master Ding's expression became increasingly impatient. He turned his head to look at the little girl who was standing at the side, as cool as water and abnormally indifferent. Young master, who is she? Bao Yan immediately looked at Arbor warily. It was this girl, right? She made young Miss Xian so angry that she cried. Arbor had just recovered his sight among his 5 senses, so everything he saw seemed a bit strange. As he looked around, his gaze landed on a restaurant's signboard. Morning Cloud Restaurant. She instinctively wanted to step inside. Chapter 1148. When Cult Master Ding saw this, he hurriedly chased after her, reaching out to grab her small hand. Jojo, you're hungry, aren't you? How could Arbor know what it felt like to be hungry right now? She was completely acting out of instinct. Seeing Cult Master Ding run all the way to her side, Arbor suddenly raised her eyes to look at him. Although her face was expressionless, in Cult Master Ding's eyes, she looked adorably silly. He saw her reach out 2 jade-white fingers and forcefully tug at his sleeve. Why are you tugging at our young master's sleeve? Bao Yan impatiently pushed her hand away. Go, 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 don't bother our young master anymore. Arbor's small face was expressionless as she swept a glance at her, then turned her small head to continue looking at Morning Cloud Restaurant. The little fellow's large eyes blinked twice, revealing an adorable yearning look. Cult Master Ding hurriedly asked, You're hungry, right? You want to eat, right? Answer me, and I'll bring you up. How could Arbor know what the hell he was talking about? This Cult Master Ding once again tragically didn't get any response. He couldn't help but sigh lowly and could only say, All right, then let's go in. He didn't expect this little blockhead to have any reaction. In any case, she didn't seem to like him from beginning to end. Young master. Bao Yan grabbed his hand and rolled her eyes as she softly said, Spare me, young master. Look at her, she's so silly and can't even speak. She's definitely a silly girl. When he thought of the first time they met, Arbor's expressionless face, her eyes unable to see, her mouth unable to speak, her face expressionless when she was with people and things, like a moving jade statue, Cult Master Ding's heart couldn't help but tighten. It's none of your business. Cult Master Ding raised his hand, but before he could grab the little girl's small hand, he saw her turn and walk into Morning Cloud Restaurant. Bao Yan, go back. Go back to the manor and tell my mother that I don't have time to go back in the short term. Cult Master Ding might also feel that his words were a bit too much, so he couldn't help but frown and say, Tell her that I'll go back to visit her in a few days. But young master, you promised old madam. Ding Yun did not wait for her to finish and ran into Morning Cloud Restaurant to chase after the young lady. Bao Yan took a deep look at her young master and watched him hurriedly enter the restaurant. She stomped her feet and hurriedly followed him in. Ah, young master, young miss, what do you want to eat? Our shop doesn't accept mystic coins, we only accept mystic grade and above herbs or forging materials. The waiter from the Morning Cloud Restaurant welcomed them with a smile. I've really earned a lot today. The beautiful ice sculpture in front of him made his eyes light up. The waiter hurriedly wiped the table and stool and asked the little beauty to sit down. There was a middle-aged man who was eating noodles at the side. With half a noodle in his mouth, he stared at Arbor in a daze. What are you looking at? Ding Yun glared at the man, causing the middle-aged man to shrink his neck and hurriedly retract his gaze. Arbor was also amused. She also turned her head to look at the middle-aged man. In fact, she was looking at the bowl of noodles placed in front of him. Ding Yun tilted his head and looked at the little girl in front of him with a smile. He threw a piece of forging material to the waiter and said, 2 bowls of noodles. Alrighty. The waiter happily went to prepare. Not a moment later, 2 steaming bowls of noodles were placed on the table. Ding Yun swept a glance at Bao Yan standing to the side and frowned. Why aren't you leaving? Chapter 1149. No, young master, this servant wants to go back with you, Bao Yan said resolutely. Ding Yun ignored her. This servant girl had been picked up by his mother and brought back to the mountain villa when she was young. She had always stayed in his courtyard to serve him, and her temperament had always been very stubborn. Once she decided on something, it was rare for her to change her mind, so Ding Yun was disinclined to say anything more. Arbor stared curiously at the bowl of noodles in front of her, and her small hand impatiently reached into the bowl. Wait! Cult Master Ding jumped in fright and hastily grabbed her small hand. However, he felt that it was like a small ice cube in his hand, cool and without a trace of warmth. He hurriedly took a pair of chopsticks and placed it in her hand. How can you use your hands? It's so hot. Come, use the chopsticks. Arbor stared at the two bamboo chopsticks in her hand with an expression that she had never seen before. She shook them, then grabbed a pair of chopsticks with each hand and reached into the bowl with difficulty to stir the noodles. After a long time, she didn't even manage to scoop up a single strand of noodles. If she found out later that she had once been so foolish, she probably wouldn't just hang up and beat up the giant ape for a day and be done with it. That was why it was said that one couldn't be too single-minded and absolute when doing anything. As a cultivation maniac, her mind was blank except for cultivation. She couldn't even take care of herself. This really wasn't good. Bao Yan couldn't help but laugh out loud. Heavens, this fool doesn't even know how to use chopsticks. Bao Yan. Ding Yan's expression turned cold. Bao Yan closed her mouth with a disgruntled expression, glaring at Arbor with a bit of jealousy and resentment. There had never been anyone or anything that could attract young master's full attention like this. Young master had always been someone who played around and didn't care about anyone or anything, but now, he actually doted on a fool so much. Come! Great Cult Master Ding simply put down his bowl and chopsticks. He picked up a clean pair of chopsticks, picked up a piece of noodles, and brought it to her lips. Eat! Darling Xiao glanced at Cult Master Ding and moved her small head closer to open her mouth. With a crack, she bit off half of the chopsticks. Cult Master Ding, Bao Yan burst out laughing. After a long struggle, he finally poured the entire bowl of noodles into her stomach. Arbor raised his hand to rub his belly, got up, and walked towards the door. Bao Yan. She had eaten the noodles and drank the soup. Was she going to leave after eating her fill? This little fool is really a little hateful. Blockhead. Cult Master Ding hurriedly threw down his bowl of noodles, got up, and ran towards her. Arbor was walking out the door when he bumped into the second shopkeeper, who had just come back from collecting the bill. The second shopkeeper inadvertently raised his head and was immediately stunned. He cried out involuntarily, "Crown Princess?" The Crown Prince and Arbor had come to this restaurant before, and it was this second manager who had personally received them. Naturally, he recognized his mistress at a glance. At this moment, the second manager stared at Arbor with wide eyes and exclaimed in surprise, "Crown Princess!" It really was the Crown Princess. Head shopkeeper, come quickly. Head shopkeeper, look at who I saw. It's the Crown Princess. During this period of time, the Crown Princess had disappeared from the Mystic Beast Forest. The Crown Prince had mustered a large force and brought his hidden guards to search for the Crown Princess' whereabouts, so all of the Crown Prince's subordinates knew about this. No wonder the second manager was so happy. If this news was immediately reported, His Highness the Crown Prince would probably go crazy with joy. What? The Crown Princess? The head shopkeeper had been busy upstairs and hadn't come down. Now that he heard the second manager's ghostly cry, he hastily ran downstairs. Chapter 1150. The head shopkeeper ran downstairs to look at Arbor and was overjoyed at the sight. Crown Princess, it's really the Crown Princess. Thank the heavens, this is great. Second brother, quick! Hurry up and report to His Highness. All right, we've finally found him. The head shopkeeper went forward, but before he could finish speaking, Ding Yun coldly blocked Arbor's path. Who are you? The head shopkeeper was stunned. I am the head shopkeeper of Morning Cloud Restaurant. Hello, sir, did you save our crown princess? Thank you so much, thank you so much. Crown princess? Ding Yun snorted. What the hell is this crown princess? We don't know you at all, please move aside. Eh? The second shopkeeper and 2 or 3 waiters rushed up, all talking at once. Sir, how can you say that? This is our crown princess. Crown princess, I am Afu. You and His Highness came here a few days ago, and I even brought you tea and water, remember? Yes, yes. Crown princess, stop fooling around. His Highness has been sending people to look for you day and night. If you're in a bad mood and want to go missing occasionally, that's fine. You can tell His Highness first, and then you can go missing. The head shopkeeper craned his neck and looked impatiently at Arbor, then gave the second shopkeeper a look. The second shopkeeper immediately understood and hurried out, presumably to find Dragon Saliva Guard Captain Yushio to pass on the message. What kind of words were these? Ding Yun couldn't bring himself to smile. He saw this and felt slightly anxious. Damn it, so this Morning Cloud Restaurant was the Crown Prince's property. This was bad. Once the news reached the Crown Prince's ears, the little blockhead would be captured and brought back at any moment. That despicable Moen, why wasn't he dead yet? Ding Yun's handsome face was cold as he separated the head shopkeeper with one hand and grabbed Arbor's small hand with the other. Let's go. Wait, you can't leave. The head shopkeeper blocked the two and looked at Ding Yun with an ugly expression. You can leave, but the Crown Princess has to stay. Little Wood, do you know them? Ding Yun's expression remained unchanged as he turned to ask Arbor. He knew that Arbor would not respond to anyone, including him. Sure enough, a certain little person's face was expressionless, and there was no reaction even after a while. Crown Princess. The head shopkeeper was anxious. He scratched his head and ears and said, I'm Old Sue. Please take a closer look. Haven't we met before? Hey! What's going on? There's no need to look anymore. All of you, get out of the way. Don't come here to claim kinship. Ding Yun sneered. He grabbed Xiao Xiao's little hand and turned to walk out of the door. Wait, stop right there. With a cold face, the manager extended his hand to block Ding Yun's path again. Ding Yun flicked his sleeves angrily, and the manager took 3 steps back with a dong 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 sound. His face was gloomy and uncertain. So powerful. This young man's cultivation was actually so profound that he could push back a level 10 Great Mystic Cultivator manager by 3 steps with a light flick of his sleeve. Inside Morning Cloud Restaurant, everyone was dead silent. The manager's expression was also very unsightly. He cupped his hands at Ding Yun and said, Today, this Sue's skills are inferior and I concede defeat. Sir, please leave your esteemed name. Beijing Manor. Ding Yun snorted. Ding Yun. So it's Beijing Manor's young Master Ding. The manager's eyes flashed, and he cupped his fists and bowed. No matter what, young Master Ding, please understand one thing. Chapter 1151. The head manager pointed at Arbor. This is the Eastern Palace's crown princess. Keeping her here will be of great benefit to you and your family. Ding Yun sneered. You want to keep me here with just the likes of you? Excuse me. With a wave of the head shopkeeper's hand, all of the waiters in Morning Cloud Restaurant rushed up with sharp gazes and surrounded Ding Yun, Xiaomu, and Bao Yan. Bao Yan pointed at Xiaomu in astonishment and asked, "Young master, is this really the Crown Prince Consort?" "No, she doesn't know them at all," Ding Yun said indifferently. "This is a shady restaurant. Bao Yan, bring little blockhead back to the manor first. I'll deal with this." "Ah, how can this be? What if Madam finds out about this? Who would step foot into my courtyard normally? Hurry and take her away." Ding Yun glared at Bao Yan. "Are you not going to listen to me anymore?" "Yes, young master." Bao Yan lowered her eyes, aggrieved. "Simply a lunatic's ravings," the head manager said furiously. "All of you, attack! You must keep him here. Be careful not to hurt the crown princess." Just as the head manager finished speaking, he suddenly saw a plain-colored figure move. Pa, he kicked a small square table, directly flattening it. Darling Xiao turned her small face and rolled up her sleeves. Her figure moved and scratched the face of the waiter closest to her. "Head manager, Her Excellency Crown Princess, what are you doing? Can't you distinguish between friend and foe first?" Ding Yun grabbed her small hand and shoved her toward Bao Yan. "Let's go." Bao Yan pulled arbor and suddenly struck out with two palms, dashing out of the door. Just as the head manager and the others were about to give chase, they saw Ding Yun suddenly float in the air and spread open his arms to release two powerful waves of mystic chi. Everyone screamed, "Ah!" and fell out like rubber balls. The tables and chairs in front of him were all smashed into wooden splinters and scattered to the ground. Ding Yun did not linger in the battle after his attack succeeded. He quickly flipped out of the window and chased after the two figures in front of him. "Quick! Quick, stop them!" The shopkeeper spat out a mouthful of blood as he crawled up from the ground and yelled. "Quick, quick, quick! Stop them!" Ding Yun jumped out of the window and saw the group of people from Morning Cloud Restaurant chasing after him, unwilling to give up. He turned his head and waved his hand. Several wooden windows and doors nearby were all shattered, startling the pedestrians who were walking on the street. They screamed and covered their heads as they dodged. Ding Yun smiled and flew to Arbor's side in a few steps. He took a breath and flew forward with Arbor. The fleeing people raised their heads one after another and stared blankly at the two goddess-like beauties. The head shopkeeper and the others chased after them in a sorry state, but Arbor was nowhere to be seen. They were so angry that they stomped their feet and sighed. "Uncle Su, what should we do now?" Fu asked. "Is the second manager back yet? Go and report again. Also, hurry and inform the Dragon Saliva Guards to close the city gates and lock down the entire city." Search. The people from Morning Cloud Restaurant rushed out one after another. Some reported, and some were busy searching. All of them were as anxious as ants on a hot pan. The head shopkeeper looked like he had nothing left to live for. Originally, finding the Crown Princess was an especially good thing, but now that if His Highness the Crown Prince were to find out that the person had escaped from their restaurant, he would definitely torture all of them to death. Chapter 1152. At this moment, a strange scene appeared on the streets of the capital. From the nobles and noble ladies to the commoners, peddlers and servants, they all stared blankly at the two beauties, one in front and one behind, as if they were taking a leisurely stroll in the courtyard. Arbor didn't notice their gazes at all. Even if she did, there wouldn't be any ripples in her heart. Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. Previously, because her vision had recovered, Arbor's attention had been diverted by a lot of fresh food. Now that she had finished eating and exited Morning Cloud Restaurant, the speed cultivation talisman once again shouted in her heart. Now, she should find an especially quiet environment to continue cultivating. Arbor raised her head and looked around, frowning a few times. The mystic energy here was very thin, and she somewhat disliked it. Lil, blockhead, let's return to the manor, okay? Ding Yun followed behind her and asked cautiously. Arbor naturally wouldn't give him any response. Now that she had recovered her vision, everything else had not recovered. She couldn't hear, and she couldn't speak, so how was she supposed to answer? Ding Yun smiled and said, if you don't object, I'll take it that you agree. In the future, you'll go wherever I go, and we'll never be separated, okay? Arbor replied with the back of her head. Bao Yan, who was at the side, glanced at Arbor with a sour taste in her heart, then said to Ding Yun, young master, I think we should leave the city as soon as possible. That shopkeeper from earlier probably went to report, and any later, I'm afraid we won't be able to leave the city gates. Ding Yun grunted in agreement. Just as he finished speaking, they heard a hoarse voice shout from the other end of the street, surround this entire street, no one is allowed to leave. Sir, what's going on? This old man has set up a small stall here, and I've been honest and dutiful. I haven't done a single bad thing. That's right, sir, we're all good citizens. Seeing the soldiers coming over in an aggressive manner, a few of the peddlers were shocked and quickly greeted the leading officer with an obsequious smile. The imperial court is searching for the criminal who kidnapped the crown princess. It's just a routine matter, and it's none of your business. Move aside, go home if you need to. Everyone obediently retreated to the side of the street. Search carefully. Don't let anyone go. The leader of the officers shouted angrily. Ding Yun cast a glance at the other end of the long street, only to see several hundred soldiers under the lead of a dark-faced man, interrogating the pedestrians one by one. Ding Yun frowned and grabbed Arbor's little hand. Little blockhead, let's go. Bao Yan clenched her fists, knowing that the situation was not good. Could it be that his young master was so daring as to kidnap someone else's crown princess? As the three of them moved quickly, the dark-faced man glanced at their departing figures and hurriedly shouted, Stop right there. Ding Yun pulled Arbor and ran faster and faster. The dark-faced man quickly caught up and angrily shouted, Stop. Ding Yun turned his head and glared at him. Who are you calling to stop? I'm calling you. The black-faced man was none other than the deputy commander of the Imperial Army, He Tian. At the same time, Hui Feng leaped in from the study's window. Holding the information in his hand, he excitedly reported, Your Highness, our men have found the crown princess. Where? Mo Lian abruptly stood up. Mo Lian wasn't the only one inside the small study. Duan Yu and Situi, who were sitting across from each other, were also surprised. Where is little junior sister? She's at Morning Cloud Restaurant on Hualing Street. As soon as he finished speaking, His Highness the Crown Prince's figure swiftly brushed past him and flew out. Chapter 1153. When He Tian received the news, he happened to be nearby with a group of soldiers, so he was naturally one step ahead of Dragon Saliva Guard Captain Yu Xiu. After Morning Cloud Restaurant sent out the news, there was no need for the Crown Prince to give the order. Once they received news that the crown princess was in the capital, be it the Hidden Night Pavilion, Dragon Saliva Guard, or Imperial Guard, they immediately split up and began to search the city. If the crown prince consort was still able to escape from under their noses like this, then who knew what His Highness the Crown Prince would do to these pitiful people? Tian happened to be nearby with a group of soldiers, so he immediately rushed over to Morning Cloud Restaurant after receiving the secret report. They began their search from the restaurant, and indeed, they soon saw Ding Yun pulling the crown princess and planning to leave quietly. He immediately stopped them. "What right do you have to tell me to stop?" Ding Yun sneered. Tian was furious. "Good lad, it's you, isn't it? The Ding Yun who injured Innkeeper Su. I advise you not to act recklessly. Quickly release our crown prince consort and allow yourself to be captured." As he spoke, a group of soldiers had already rushed over and surrounded Ding Yun and Arbor. The crowd dispersed in all directions, afraid that they would accidentally injure themselves in a fight. "Just with your motley crew? You want to keep me, Ding Yun, here?" He sneered. "What arrogance! All of you, get out of the way. I'll deal with this little brat." Tian pulled out the steel sword at his waist and waved it, sending a gust of wind toward Ding Yun. Ding Yun guffawed, and his eyes narrowed as he coldly uttered, "Just in time." He lightly pushed Xiaomu aside before grabbing a soldier beside him to swiftly block the attack. That soldier felt the wind from the sword was biting cold. If Tian hadn't withdrawn his aura, half of his head would have been cut off. Even so, the soldier broke out in a cold sweat. He raised his hand to touch his head and found that a large chunk of his hair had been shaved off, leaving his forehead completely bald. Ding Yun laughed heartily as he snatched the spear from the soldier's hand and tossed him aside. The soldier was thrown onto the table at the side and rolled onto the ground. He cried out in pain and was helped up by his companions. Tian saw that he was so crafty and strange, toying with his soldiers the moment he made a move, and his expression could not help but become furious. In the blink of an eye, Tian's second and third strikes carried the unique strength of a level 11 body cultivator and arrived in front of Ding Yun. Ding Yun raised his spear to block the attack, his eyes filled with ridicule as he praised, "Good saber technique." Tian's saber focused on speed. Seeing Ding Yun easily block two of his moves while talking, he couldn't help but secretly admire this young man's cultivation. He was a rough man. If he could win, then he could win. If he couldn't, then he couldn't. There was nothing to be unconvinced about. Right now, his skills were inferior, but he could not retreat even half a step. The most important thing right now was to rescue the crown princess. No matter how bad it was, he had to keep them here and wait for the crown prince to arrive. He didn't know what was wrong with the crown princess. Her gaze was cold as she looked in their direction, as if she didn't even recognize him. She didn't know if this brat had done something to her to make her look like an idiot. In the blink of an eye, Tian had already exchanged over 100 moves with Ding Yun and was forced to retreat. Tian couldn't help but feel frustrated. He didn't expect this Ding brat to have such a profound cultivation despite his young age. If this continued, he was afraid that he would lose to him due to lack of strength. Chapter 1154. Ding Yun's lips curled into a sneer as he mercilessly grabbed at his shoulder. This claw seemed to have the intention of breaking Tian's shoulder blade. He didn't feel like teasing these small fries anymore. In reality, many thoughts had also flashed through Ding Yun's mind. At this moment, he was a bit regretful. He regretted wandering around the Emerald Kingdom capital. If he had brought this darling back to the headquarters earlier, it wouldn't have attracted so much trouble. He had been too confident. Although these small fries weren't his match, he was afraid that if they fought for a long time, they would attract even more enemies. At that time, it would be hard to guarantee victory. His little blockhead didn't recognize anyone right now. That was perfect. In his heart, he really didn't want her to recover her memory. Once she returned to normal, he wouldn't be treated well by her. Perhaps she would attack him mercilessly like that night by the river. When he thought of this, his heart felt like it was being wrenched by something, making him extremely uncomfortable. A long howl came from the other end of the street. Tian suddenly jumped up and followed up with a howl. Ding Yun's heart trembled, knowing that the dark-faced man's companions had rushed over. In a hurry, a trace of mystic energy floated up from his hands, suppressing the spears in the soldiers' hands. In the blink of an eye, he had them all turn around and point their spears at Tian. Those soldiers cried out, "Io," their hands stabbing their spears at Tian uncontrollably. Tian was greatly alarmed. His steel saber chopped off the spearheads with a few swishes, and he shouted, "Steady yourselves! Retreat, retreat!" Ding Yun took advantage of the chaos to grab Arbor's small hand, pulling her along as he ran towards the city gates. With a flick of his sleeve, several passers-by were all pushed to the ground by the mystic energy he released. The rolling passers-by sprawled on the ground, crying out in alarm. Tian led everyone in pursuit and nearly stepped on those passers-by, so he hastily avoided them. Arbor still didn't know what happened, so she expressionlessly turned to glance at Tian and the others. "Crown Princess!" Tian angrily cursed, "Motherfucker," and chased over with flying steps while holding his steel saber. He rebuked, "Stinking brat, you better hurry and stop. What kind of sorcery did you use on our crown princess? She can't even recognize me." Ding Yun ignored him and pulled Arbor along as he ran. However, he had only taken a few steps when he heard the sound of clothes fluttering behind him. 3 figures just happened to land around them, blocking Ding Yun's path in a triangular formation. Tian shouted, "Your Highness," and rushed over with his blade. Ding Yun focused his gaze and saw that it was Prince Emo, Duanyu, and Sijui. When Ding Yun saw Crown Prince Emo, he was visibly startled. Why did he look so safe and sound? Wasn't he poisoned by devil grass, an extremely potent neurotoxin? In a short period of time, the nerves would be paralyzed, which would then affect the limbs and body. He would gradually become a paralyzed person. But now, this man was actually unharmed. Ding Yun's pupils constricted slightly as a trace of discomfort slid through his heart. Why was the devil grass ineffective on this man? Prince Emo narrowed his phoenix eyes and coldly said, "Return the baby to me and you can scram." Ding Yun reflexively grasped Arbor's small hand and pretended to be a complete stranger. He glared at them and shouted, "Who are you people? Why are you obstructing our path time and time again? Withdraw." A trace of fury flashed through Prince Mo's eyes. He glanced at the unresponsive Arbor with unconcealable jealousy and hatred in his heart. Chapter 1155. With a swish, her sword pierced towards Ding Yun's heart at an extremely fast speed. This stab was ruthless and accurate, and it came so quickly. However, Ding Yun gathered his energy and flipped in midair, grabbing Arbor as he retreated 3 steps. Duanyu exclaimed with a smile before nodding and praising, "Your martial arts aren't bad." Unfortunately, you're about to become a dead man. Ding Yun snorted. You're talking about yourself, right? You still dare to hold on to me and not let go? Emolian was enraged, and Raven Moon abruptly appeared in her palm. A vicious aura streaked across the air, aiming for Ding Yun's eyes. Your Highness, please wait. Situi quickly flew in front of him and blocked his sword. He acted like a peacemaker as he said, it won't be too late to make a move after we've made things clear. Little junior sister. Why are you so naughty? Why didn't you inform us when you returned to the royal capital? Do you know that in order to find you, His Highness the Crown Prince has spent a lot of effort? Xiaoshe. Situi paused in the middle of his words because he realized that his junior sister's eyes had not even glanced in his direction. This little fellow was looking around for who knew what. She really was blind to not look in their direction when the three peerlessly handsome men were standing in front of her. She could still absent-mindedly look around like this? Look my ass. Jojo. Duanyu also noticed that Arbor's expression was a bit off, so he couldn't resist calling out to her. Arbor's small face was stoic as she searched her surroundings, causing them to also turn their heads to see what she was looking at. When Arbor's gaze landed on the three of them, an extremely icy and detached face happened to be facing them. Her gaze didn't move at all, and her expression didn't change at all. It was as if she was looking at three strangers. Emolien's heart contracted. Her heart was about to shatter when she saw this terrifying and icy gaze. Duanyu's eyes also widened in shock. Jojo, what's wrong? Why don't you recognize us? We didn't recognize each other in the first place. Why pretend like you know each other? Ding Yun said with a cold laugh. There's nothing to say. It was him. After capturing our Xiao, I don't know what they fed her, but now she looks like an idiot. Even now, he still dares to refuse to let go. Let me kill him first. Duanyu's beautiful peach blossom eyes were tainted with a layer of fury, and he tilted his body to throw a yearning nail at Ding Yun's throat. Brother Duanyu, calm down. Although Situi was also anxious, he was the calmest among them and wouldn't let the matter before him get to his head. Hence, he hastily pressed down on Duanyu and turned to say to Ding Yun, this humble one is Heavenly Dao sect Situi. Brother must be Beijing Manor's young master, Ding Yun. That's right. Ding Yun stared at him. Who are you? Why are you blocking our path again and again? Bao Yan nervously clenched her fists as she stood on the side. When Prince Mo and the others appeared, her heart started pounding madly like a drum. She was on tenterhooks for her young master's safety. She could tell that the young master's strength was slightly inferior to His Highness the Crown Prince's. If the three people before her joined forces, the young master absolutely wouldn't be able to escape alive. It was all this fool's fault. It was all her fault for causing this disaster. Bao Yan resentfully looked at Arbor, who was standing next to the young master. Arbor was expressionless and even somewhat absent-minded. Chapter 1156. Her gaze kept wandering around, searching for a place with enough mystic energy for her to cultivate. He noticed that her gaze never rested on him for even a moment from beginning to end. Prince Mo was truly anxious, infuriated, and in unbearable heartache. What was going on? What exactly happened inside the Mystic Beast Forest secret realm? Why did his darling act like she didn't know him at all? Emolian only felt a heart-wrenching fury gushing out. That fury instantly scuttled up from the depths of her heart, and she urgently needed to find an outlet to vent. Stop pretending. Don't you know the reason why we stopped you? Tell us, what exactly do you want for Jojo to be released? Emolian demanded while glaring at Ding Yun. Jojo? Ding Yun pretended to look down at the little lady whose gaze was wandering everywhere. You're talking about her? Nonsense. Duan Yu harumphed. You punk, quickly return Jojo if you know what's good for you. Otherwise, don't blame us for attacking you. She's not the Jojo you're talking about. Ding Yun looked like he was lying through his teeth, but his expression was extremely serious. Look, she doesn't know you guys at all. She says she's called Lil Blockhead, and she's my. Why are you still arguing with him? Why don't you kill him and snatch Jojo back? Duan Yu jumped up and shouted, why aren't you attacking? Fight! Dragon Saliva Guard Captain Yu Xiu, who had rushed over upon hearing the news, led a group of Dragon Saliva Guard disciples over. Before he could speak, the four people were about to fight. Situi glanced at them in astonishment and asked hesitantly, are we attacking together? Duh! This isn't too good, right? Situi hesitated. What's not good about it? Now isn't the time to talk about righteousness in the pugilistic world. Attack together and kill this guy. Then all the problems will be solved. Duan Yu made the final decision. For the first time, Prince Mo felt that Duan Yu was quite quick-witted. He was right. Everything would be settled after killing him. Duan Yu and Prince Mo flew forward one after another, and Raven Moon and Raven Bone Fan simultaneously swung at Ding Yun. What a lousy idea! Situi sighed inwardly. In fact, he wanted to ask young Master Ding what was going on with his junior sister. Perhaps this young Master Ding had accidentally picked up his junior sister and brought her with him all the way. What if this young Master Ding was junior sister's benefactor? It was a little unreasonable for him to suddenly attack young Master Ding. The strangest thing was that little junior sister didn't even have the slightest reaction when she saw them. In the past, whenever she saw him, even if her face was stoic, she would still cutely call him senior brother Situ. Prince Mo and Duan Yu attacked Ding Yun without another word. After a moment of hesitation, Situi also pounced forward, unsheathing the long sword at his waist. 3 bursts of vigorous dark force simultaneously crashed into young Master Ding's chest, back, and long legs. Ding Yun's heart couldn't help but tremble. He had previously used the identity of thief sage Ding Ting Ding to fight with Prince Mo, and he knew that he was no match for him. If he hadn't schemed against him at that time, he probably wouldn't have been able to escape. Now that Duan Yu and Situi were added to the mix, it became increasingly difficult. He felt like every strike from the trio wanted his life. After blocking Duan Yu's palm strike with great difficulty, Mo Yen and Situi's swords stabbed toward his chest as fast as lightning. Amidst the chaos, Ding Yun's gaze focused, and he turned to smile at Duan Yu. Chapter 1157. Laugh my ass. Duan Yu was about to scold him when the other party opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of poisonous mist. After Duan Yu dodged to the side, he almost bumped into the sword that Situi handed over. This made Situi so angry that he jumped in fright and quickly shouted, "Brother Duan Yu, what the hell are you doing? There's something wrong with this punk." Duan Yu quickly shouted, "He's a superhuman." Mo Lian looked at Ding Yun pensively. She didn't say anything and just brandished her longsword, forcing Ding Yun to retreat in a fluster. Yu Xiu suddenly called out, "Crown Prince Consort." Arbor's gaze didn't land on those people. In reality, she had already sensed the location with the densest mystic energy in the entire royal capital. Compared to the mystic energy inside the Mystic Beast Forest mystic realm, the mystic energy here was clearly much thinner. But it was better than nothing, right? Arbor locked onto her target and flew up to the roof in a flash, directly leaving the group of men staring at each other on the street behind. She ran off first by herself. Eh? Little junior sister. Situi couldn't resist shouting when he returned to his senses. Fuck. They were fighting enthusiastically over there, but little junior sister didn't care at all and abandoned them to run off first. How could Arbor hear that? After a few leaps, the little one disappeared from everyone's sight. Duan Yu was a bit dumbfounded, but his movements weren't slow as he reflexively blocked Ding Yun's path. During this one breath's time, Mo Lian abandoned everyone and quickly chased after Arbor's fleeing figure. Darling Xiao's disappearance only took a few seconds, so Mo Lian was also fast enough to catch up. Not long after, she saw that nimble little fellow running towards the mountain behind Honghai Temple on all fours. Behind Fu Mountain was Zhuzi Lake. Why was the little fellow running there? Our dear Arbor's mind was restless at this moment. Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. Enrich, it felt pretty good as expected. The closer she got to Fu Mountain, the denser the mystic energy felt. Compared to the thin mystic energy in the entire capital, the mystic energy in the mountain behind Fu Mountain was much denser. When Arbor reached the mountain behind Fu Mountain, a jade-green lake appeared before her eyes. The jade-green water was as serene as a mirror. To the lake rippled as sunlight seeped into it. Xiaomu jumped onto a large rock by the lakeside and casually combed her long hair that had been messed up by the wind with a slight movement of her fingers. The water ripples lightly, the water, ripples of fish's tail after tail, to the side to the water to the back of the lake. The lake water reflected a small face that was as white as jade. Her unperturbed gaze landed on the lake's surface as she concentrated on the water. Her brows furrowed with a hint of coldness, as if she could freeze the lake's jade-green ripples. Arbor pursed her beady lips and slowly raised her fair and tender breasts. She gently stroked the ripples on the lake's surface before suddenly leaping into the water with a splash. She emerged from the water with a slender fish and spat out a mouthful of bubbles. A defensive barrier naturally covered her body, and she closed her eyes to rapidly absorb the dense mystic energy around the lake. The little fellow was only following her instincts and intuition when doing these actions, so her face was as expressionless as a wooden sculpture. As if she was going to carry out a sacred mission, her small face was stoic, and her entire body emitted a steady and calm aura. Chapter 1158. Arbor merely followed her instincts and skillfully entered a cultivation state. Mo Lian's chilly aura enveloped this lake. When he saw the little fellow's current state, he didn't know whether to laugh or be angry. How come he never knew that the first thing this mischievous little thing did after returning to the Mo Kingdom capital was to run to Zhuzi Lake behind Fu Mountain to cultivate? Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. Xiaomu did not know that Crown Prince Mo was staring fixedly at her beside her, gazing at her in a daze. She immersed herself in cultivation for 2 days and 3 nights without any activity. Mo Lian kept watch over her the entire time, watching over this vexing little thing. On the other side, after Ding Yun lost Arbor, he was chased out of the city gate by Duan Yu, Yu Xiu, and the others. Situi originally wanted to stop them after following them out of the city gate, but Yu Xiu and the others simply didn't give Ding Yun a chance to speak. After exiting the Mo Kingdom capital, the group chased Cult Master Ding all the way to Gale Forest and completely surrounded him. The atmosphere froze for a moment. Bao Yan quickly exclaimed, "Young master, leave first." "Why should I leave?" Ding Yun sneered. His slender figure suddenly streaked across the sky as he sent a wave of mystic energy at Duan Yu and the others. Duan Yu met him with narrowed eyes, and the two exchanged over 100 blows. As they fought, the sound of wind mixed with the clanging of swords rang out incessantly. "Brother Duan Yu! Young Master Ding! Can the two of you slow down and listen to what I have to say first?" Situi twitched his mouth and hastily called out. In the open space in front of the forest, dense mystic energy transformed into balls of white light that exploded. Duan Yu and Ding Yun abruptly separated from each other upon contact. The Dragon Saliva Guard soldiers at the front of the formation couldn't dodge in time and were all injured by the mystic energy, tumbling backwards with a plop. Yu Xiu's face darkened, and he was about to charge forward with his sword when Duan Yu reached out to stop him. Bao Yan gritted her teeth and steeled her heart. Suddenly, she leaped onto a tree. After closing her eyes, a few drops of sweat slowly seeped out of her small face. When she opened her eyes again, Bao Yan put her little hand to her lips and cried out a few times. Suddenly, furry faces slowly emerged from behind the trees in the forest. Swaying their long tails, a dozen or so vicious wolves bared their sharp teeth at Duan Yu's group. Duan Yu raised a brow. Interesting. The little maid beside Ding Yun was actually a person with special abilities. Bao Yan used her telekinesis to summon the wolves nearby. With the range of her special ability, she could only summon more than 10 wolves. Even so, it was still quite impressive. It must be known that the pack of wolves that Bao Yan had summoned were not ordinary wolves. Most of them were Xian beasts of the 5th level and above. It was slightly troublesome to deal with them. After exhausting her psychokinesis, Bao Yan barely propped up her limp body and slid down. With her back against the tree, she stared unblinkingly at Duan Yu's group. He let out a soft reprimand. The large wolf in the lead suddenly pounced ferociously in Duan Yu's direction. Duan Yu sneered and instinctively shook the raven bone fan in his hand. He dodged the vicious wolf's pounce with a crouch and turned around to leap onto the wolf's back at lightning speed. With a flash of silver light, Duan Yu gently closed the raven bone fan in his hand. With a forceful fling of his raised wrist, the raven bone fan abruptly transformed into a longsword. The sharp blade reversed and directly stabbed into the large wolf's head. Duan Yu's lips curled into a sneer. Chapter 1159. That dumb wolf only had time to whimper twice before collapsing heavily on the ground, dead. Immediately afterward, 2 more vicious wolves pounced forward, but their necks were slit by the longsword. The pack of wolves whimpered and didn't dare to act rashly. Bao Yan bit her lips and shouted angrily, "Hurry and go!" Duan Yu put away his longsword and silently stood under the tree, his lips curling into a sardonic smile. Suddenly, he flung his sleeve, and a round, sparkling emerald pearl suddenly leaped into the air. Duan Yu took out a small object that resembled an emerald green bamboo tube from his waist. He opened the back cover and instantly sucked the emerald pearl inside. He abruptly twisted the lid and lightly pressed it, causing a green light to explode instantly. A ray of light shot out and landed at the feet of the pack of wolves. With a loud boom, large patches of flames immediately erupted. Duanyu looked at the flames that kept rippling in front of him. When he saw that the vicious wolves were all engulfed by the flames, he blinked and murmured with a chuckle, "Jade Heavenly Thunder, not bad at all." This new type of firearm's power could surpass the core ravaging thunder, and its range was also much further. Dingyun flipped twice in the air while dragging Baoyan along. His sleeves were stained by the green flames, and a series of small holes were burned into them. Cult Master Ding was fine, but Baoyan was a bit miserable. She was already a bit weak after using her special power, and now that she was burned by the soaring flames, her arms and legs were in pain from the burns. Her body went limp, and she fell to the ground. "Let's go." Dingyun grabbed Baoyan and gave her a push before escaping into the forest with her with an unsightly expression. Yu Xiu was about to give chase with his men when Duanyu stopped him. "Don't chase." Situi sighed in relief and said, "I feel that this matter is quite strange. I wonder how little junior sister is doing." A hint of worry flashed through Duanyu's eyes. "Let's go back and take a look." My Xiao's division, after 2 days and 3 nights, Arbor opened her eyes. Her cultivation had already advanced from phenomenal success to the pinnacle of level 13 mystic cultivation. In addition, not only did her strength increase by a minor realm, but her eyes moved slightly, as if her sense of hearing and taste had also recovered. Arbor raised her eyebrows. She didn't know why, but she felt a little excited. It seemed that something important was about to come back. The little fellow squatted inside the defensive shield and swayed a few times with the flow of water. Suddenly, she saw a moon-white figure swimming quickly towards her. Immediately after, a faint medicinal fragrance wrapped around her. Her lips were gently opened by the tip of someone's tongue, and an endless medicinal fragrance followed. Arbor's eyes were wide open. He didn't understand what was going on. The surrounding scenery was very detailed. Even the schools of fish that were swimming around could be seen clearly, and the colorful spots on their bodies could be seen clearly. But now was not the time to study fish. Under normal circumstances, Arbor should have pushed the person in front of him away and kicked him hard with his little foot. But for some reason, he couldn't bear to do it. His fist had already reached the back of that person's head, but he still stopped. Cough, 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 cough. The little fellow actually couldn't hold her breath and nearly choked on her own saliva. She couldn't resist stretching out her little paws to push him away, but she suddenly realized that his slender fingers were tightly gripping her waist. Her entire body was wrapped in his embrace, and her small hands and feet were suppressed. She was practically unable to move. Chapter 1160. He wrapped his arms around her waist and pressed his soft lips against hers. This kiss was so long that it seemed like it would last until the end of time. He held on to her and never let go, searching her mouth to his heart's content. Arbor opened her eyes wide and glared at him. No matter how much Mo Yen closed his eyes and pressed down on her to kiss her, after a long while, he finally couldn't help but bring her to the surface of the water. Because this little fellow kept glaring at him. Although she didn't make a sound, that strange little expression on her face made him feel stifled. She actually wasn't intoxicated at all. To think that he had already sunk into it, how infuriating! A certain baby who had lost her 7 emotions and 6 desires only knew that this strange big brother kept nibbling on her. There weren't any ripples in her heart. Splash! With a soft sound, Arbor was lifted out of the water with both hands. She kicked her leg and reached out to press down on the rock on her right, flipping over and sitting on it. This time, she saw it clearly. On the sparkling green water surface, there was a man in white with long hair and a few droplets of water on his handsome face. His black, satin-like hair was soaked in the lake water, sticking to his straight back. His phoenix eyes were filled with a faint light as he stared straight at her, as if he wanted to see through her to the depths of her heart. Just like that, he stared at her in a daze. After a long while, he finally let out a long sigh. Unexpectedly, Xiaomu also followed suit and sighed. She blinked her eyes and coughed lightly. Then, she raised her hand to touch her throat and realized that she could actually speak. "Jojo, are you pretending that you don't know me?" The water rippled gently, and this beauty swayed to the side of the big rock, half lying there and looking at her. Darling Xiao blinked and suddenly said, "Who are you?" Mo Lian tightly pursed his thin lips. Suddenly, he reached out and pulled her into the water again. He was overwhelmed by rage and grief, and he cupped her small face in his hands. Without another word, he bit down on her small mouth and nibbled on it rudely. "Who am I? Who do you think I am? Tell me." Boom! Arbor tried to restrain himself again and again, but in the end, he couldn't take it anymore. He stretched out a small fist and punched the back of Mo Lian's head. "What are you doing?" Xiaomu shouted as she forcefully pushed away his drenched body and wiped her small mouth in passing. Mo Lian, Why did he feel that the little thing in front of him was inexplicably cute? "I'm your husband." His heart skipped a beat, and he reached out to hug her. However, she raised her small hand and slapped his hand away rudely. It was already the 12th day since the disaster courting talisman had taken effect. Arbor's 5 senses and consciousness were slowly recovering. However, the only goal in his heart would never change. Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. Where are we going? Seeing that the little fellow was about to jump into the water again, Mo Lian quickly pulled her into his embrace and forcefully held her hands down. A trace of anger flashed across his almond-shaped eyes. "Don't move." With this soft and moist body in his arms, how much willpower did he have to use to restrain himself? This little fellow actually dared to move around to provoke him. Wasn't she worried that he would do her on the spot? Arbor slightly tilted her little head and met his pair of beautiful black eyes. Her little eyes flickered. Suddenly, a loud drumming sound came from his abdomen. Mo Lian lowered his head and reached out to touch her shriveled little stomach. A trace of heartache flashed across his eyes. Chapter 1161. He didn't know what had happened to this little thing recently. Did she not take good care of herself these past few days? He kept feeling that she had lost quite a bit of weight. That originally round place seemed to have also become thinner. His heart felt so bad. He had taken great pains to raise her until she was a little rounder, but after a few days, she had returned to her original state. Sigh. Xiaomu also sighed along with him, looking very comical. Mo Lian's phoenix eyes revealed traces of a smile. "I am your husband." He moved closer to her ear and whispered in a low voice, "I am your husband, baby." He repeated it several times, his breath lingering in her ear. Although she had not recovered her sense of touch and could not feel him close to her, she still felt that it was very strange. This man was really quite good looking. His head of waterfall-like black hair that hung down to the lake's surface was gently parted by the wind. At this time, he was holding the little fellow and sitting with her on that large rock. He lowered his head and stared at her with those pure black phoenix eyes without blinking, as if he wanted to carve her into the depths of his bones and never let her go. The deep affection engraved in those eyes, even if the little fellow was someone who had lost her love and didn't feel anything at the moment, she could almost feel that something was wrong. It was too strong. Arbor reached out her little hand and pushed Emoyen's handsome face away. The lake breeze gently blew through his jade-white robe and his jade belt slightly fluttered in the wind. It was the same feeling he gave her at this moment, very ethereal and pure. What a strange man. Husband? She blinked her eyes. That silly little appearance fell into Emoyen's eyes and was especially cute. Yes, husband. Arbor moved her little legs and thought in distress. This person had clearly been hindering her cultivation, but why couldn't she do anything to him? Logically speaking, anyone who hindered her cultivation should be erased, but Miss Chow didn't want to do anything to this person in front of her. And then, maybe it was because he was handsome. A golden drumstick that was roasted until it was glossy with oil suddenly waved in front of Arbor. Arbor blinked again and again. For a moment, she thought it was an illusion, so she reached out and pinched his jade-like cheek. Does it hurt? Darling Chow asked. Hiss. What a strong hand. Emoyen creased his good-looking brows and nodded honestly. Only then did Arbor snatch the drumstick and take a bite, wiping his oily little hands on his moon-white robe sleeve. Emoyen chuckled, lowered his head and hugged her waist. He leaned over and kissed her white and tender little face, thinking to himself, no matter how his Jojo has changed, it's still his. Even if she didn't remember him for the time being, it didn't matter as long as she remembered him again. Moreover, Emoyen suspected that the reason why Jojo had become like this was probably related to Dingyun from Beijing Manor. Did Dingyun give her some kind of medicine? It must be. Looking at that guy's wretched appearance, he must have fed his baby some medicine and then tried to force his baby to stay by his side. Yes, that's right. This must be the truth. No matter how quick-witted Emoyen was, he probably wouldn't have thought of it. The reason why Arbor, this little fellow, became like this was all because of the disaster-courting talisman that she drew herself. Arbor finished eating the drumstick and wiped her oily little hands on his clean robe. Only then did she move her arms and legs, wanting to get out of his embrace and go into the water to continue cultivating. Chapter 1162. The taste of today's food wasn't bad. It was crispy and fragrant, unlike in the past where everything tasted like wax. Emoyen's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick as he immediately saw through her intentions. He hugged her little body and whispered in her ear, "Baby, baby? Let's go home first." Arbor turned her little face to look at him as the voice in her heart kept urging her, "Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate." She also hurriedly cried out, "Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate." Emoyen was stunned as he reached out to hold her hands and feet and hurriedly said, all right, all right, all right, cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. How about I bring you back to the Eastern Palace to cultivate? That place has denser mystic energy than here. He had to coax her back first before anything else, Emoyen secretly said in his heart. Arbor tilted her head at him as a faint dazed look flashed past her bright eyes. Eastern Palace to cultivate? What kind of place was that? Cultivate. Cultivate, cultivate. All right, cultivate, cultivate. That place has denser mystic energy than here. Cultivating there is much faster than cultivating here at Juicy Lake. Darling Xiao shook her head. Not going, I want to cultivate here. This person would hinder her cultivation. It would make her uneasy. Look, he was obstructing her right now. He was just too hateful. Emolien's face subconsciously darkened as he wrapped his arms around her waist and carried her up as he said firmly, let's go back to the palace. This time, no matter what, he had to put her right under his nose. He could let her do whatever she wanted, but not returning to the palace was out of the question. Darling Xiao immediately got angry as she leaned on his shoulder, revealing her little white teeth as she bit him hard. This bite of her little teeth was just like scratching an itch. Emolien turned his head to look at her with an unusually determined expression. Be good, let's go home first. The little fellow shook her head like a rattle drum. Humph! He actually yelled at her. Arbor was furious. She didn't know why, but she felt that this person wouldn't yell at her in the past. He had changed. He didn't love her anymore. It had to be known that although she had lost her 7 emotions and 6 desires and had her memories blocked, she was still subconsciously attracted to Mo after interacting with him. In front of Prince Mo, she had always been a little emperor. Don't even mention being wronged, he had never even raised his voice. How dare he yell at her now? Darling Xiao was very unhappy. She struggled to land on the rock, turned around, and simply faced him with the back of her head. Emolien didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She reached out and pulled her little hand. She raised her arms and hugged her from behind. She whispered, Baby, it's my fault. I shouldn't have been so loud. Don't be angry, okay? Did he think that by saying a few nice words, she would not be angry? Darling Xiao snorted inwardly and continued to ignore him. Baby. Emolien sighed softly. He grabbed her little hand and turned her body to face him. He raised his hand and caressed her soft little face. Good Jojo, what can I do to appease your anger? Why don't you hit me? It'll be fine as long as your anger subsides. Humph. Arbor raised her chin and rolled her eyes. Emolien couldn't help but pull her into his embrace. His expression was somewhat melancholic as he said faintly, Jojo, we haven't seen each other in a long time. Don't be angry with me. Do you know how much I've missed you and missed you during this period of time? Ever since he found out that she had been transported out of the Mystic Beast Forest secret realm, he was about to go crazy and searched for her all day long. It's already 4 p.m. To be honest, I'm also rather dumbfounded. See you in a few hours. Chapter 1163. Now that he had finally found her, he would not let her go no matter what. Arbor's heart stirred slightly, but she still raised her head and looked at him with a serious expression. Cultivate. Emolien nodded. Okay, we'll go back and cultivate now. After saying that, he did not give her a chance to object. While carrying her, Emolien's figure flashed towards the lakeshore. However, he thought to himself, his darling has turned into a cultivation maniac. What to do? It's so urgent. Cultivating every day, what should he do? What if on the day of the wedding, in the middle of the wedding ceremony, this baby suddenly told him to cultivate? How could he endure that? Emolien carried his little girl with a melancholy expression and mounted the horse. After leaving the vicinity of Juicy Lake, they headed towards the direction of the Forbidden Palace. After leaving the Honghai Temple, they arrived at the main street. There were many people on the street, so Mo Lien slowed down the speed of his horse. At this moment, a group of people came from the corner of the main street, and some people cheered. Mo Lien pulled on the reins and frowned slightly. Carrying arbor, he urged the horse to head towards the side of the road. He did not intend to meet with that group of people directly to avoid trouble. Cultivate. The little fellow tugged at his hair in dissatisfaction and muttered. What a waste of time, she was in a hurry to cultivate now. Okay, cultivate, we'll go home and cultivate right away. Mo Lien smiled and rubbed her head helplessly. His gaze followed the crowd and looked forward. On the street, a group of soldiers with neat military attire were holding long spears and driving the people to the sides of the road, creating a large road in the middle. The soldiers' long spears formed a line, blocking the crowd of people who were watching the commotion. On each of their young faces, there was an expressionless coldness. The sound of horse hooves could be heard. The people looked over excitedly, their eyes shining with anticipation. They saw a handsome young man around 25 years old on a fine horse with a jet-black mane slowly coming over. The man was abnormally tall and powerful. He carried a long spear on his back with his left hand and a horse's reins with his right hand. He wore a golden crown on his head and a pair of black boots with cloud patterns on his feet. On his angular face, there was a pair of stern eyes that were bright and full of expression. His tightly pursed lips did not reveal a trace of a smile. Instantly, a small commotion broke out in the crowd. Heavens, the vassal prince of Nan has returned to the capital. It's our invincible and victorious vassal prince of Nan. I heard that this time, the crown prince defeated the northern Qi kingdom and captured their princess and 2 princes. Ha ha ha, you've really raised the prestige of our great Mo kingdom. Look, those behind must be the Ding slaves of northern Qi. Smiles appeared on the faces of the commoners as they fell to their knees. Congratulations to the crown prince for his victory. The vassal prince of Nan, Chofu, was the first to arrive, accompanied by several valiant generals as he swaggered on his tall horse. Behind him were several hundred northern Qi Ding slaves in ragged clothes, their faces covered in grime, and their clothes were tied up with 2 to 3 ropes. Those Ding slaves, regardless of their age, gender, all had their right hands tied up with ropes. One by one, they formed a long line. The soldiers' whips chased after them from behind, shouting for them to hurry on their way. The young crown princess leaned into Mo Lien's embrace with her eyes wide open. Seeing an old grandfather stumble and fall to the ground, the soldiers' whips mercilessly lashed out. In just a few moments, that old man was covered in blood, and his cries and shouts filled the street. On the other hand, the commoners on both sides of the street watched with relish. Chapter 1164. At this moment, 2 riders arrived at lightning speed. The eldest young master of the State Duke of Qing's estate, General of Public Might Shi Guangfeng, and a retainer cupped their fists toward the vassal prince of Nan, Chofu. General Hu Feng has come to welcome the general's entourage under the great king's orders. Thank you for your trouble, General Shi. The vassal prince of Nan's stern expression remained unchanged as he nodded indifferently. Under the great king's orders, northern Qi kingdom's prisoners of war are to be temporarily escorted to the North Barracks prison and be under strict supervision. Vassal prince, please. Shi Guangfeng gestured as he inadvertently cast a glance in Prince Mo's direction. The vassal prince of Nan, Chofu, glanced at Shi Guangfeng indifferently and nodded before following him to the king's palace to meet the emperor. The young crown princess pointed at those prisoners of war in tattered clothes and looked up at Prince Emo, only to see him slightly narrowing his eyes as if he was pondering something. "Husband?" Prince Emo lowered his head to look at her and was secretly amused. He poked her small chin with his finger. "What do you want to tell your husband?" "I don't like it." The young crown princess knitted her delicate brows in displeasure. Prince Emo was truly the person who understood his beloved wife the best in the world. Back then, when his darling was too lazy to speak a single word, he could instantly understand the baby's meaning through eye contact, not to mention now. The little fellow was saying that she didn't like those soldiers viciously bullying an old man who didn't have the strength to truss a chicken. "Your husband also doesn't like it." Prince Emo immediately nodded and stood on his beloved wife's side without any moral integrity. "Wait for your husband to return and understand the situation. Let's return to the palace first." Just as he was about to leave on his horse, he saw that the retainer that Shi Guangfeng brought along had a conflict with two high-ranking officers under the vassal prince of Nan's command. The retainer was called Shi Zhong, and he was an important subordinate of the general of public might, Shi Guangfeng. At this moment, Shi Zhong and the two high-ranking officers under the vassal prince of Nan's command were glaring at each other. "If I say no, it means no. You can't take these two away." The vassal prince of Nan's subordinate, that middle-aged man with a wide mouth and nose, furiously said, "These two people aren't captives from the northern Qi kingdom. They are two mermen that our general captured and specially brought back to the capital." He planned to peel off their merman pearls and present them to his mother, Princess Anam. "You can't take them away." The two mermaids were around 18 years old. They were wearing ragged white undergarments and had been hiding in the prison wagon, silently crying and trembling. "How can you prove that these two are mermen?" Shi Zhong said angrily, "I have been ordered by the great king to escort all prisoners of war to the north camp. Are you going to defy the order?" "Bullshit!" The man with a wide mouth and nose cursed. "Do you not understand human language? I already said that these two women are not prisoners of war from northern Qi. The two of them were mermaids. This was because the shark pearl would lose its effect in less than an hour after it left the body. Therefore, our heir apparent specially escorted the two of them back to the capital and took an hour to extract the mermaid pearl from their bodies. Do you understand or not, huh? Old Jia, if this person doesn't believe us, then let him see for himself." Another young general with a wretched expression suddenly laughed. He tapped the whip in his hand and lashed it towards the prison cart. Slap! The whip landed on the prison wagon, and the tip of the whip ripped open the cloth covering one of the mermaid's legs, revealing a fair calf. "Don't worry. You may see it as a leg now, but it will be a fishtail later, ha ha ha." That retainer still wanted to lash the whip over, but his eyes revealed a somewhat vulgar glint. Chapter 1165. Shi Zhong raised his hand to stop him with a sullen expression. "We've already captured them, so there's no need to make things difficult for these two young ladies, right?" That young general scoffed and crossed his arms as he looked at Shi Zhong provocatively. "These are people that our general captured. What does it have to do with you? Take them away and escort them back to the prince's estate." At the young general's command, the old man driving the prison carriage brandished his whip. Shizhong blocked the carriage with his horse and sneered, "After entering the capital, they're all prisoners of war. Escort them all back to the North Barracks." "Shizhong, are you courting death?" The young General Niancheng raised the whip in his hand with a frosty expression. "If you dare to block this young lord's path again, be careful that this whip doesn't have eyes." "Oh? How blind?" Prince Mo, who had spurred his horse over, replied leisurely. Everyone was startled when they turned to look. Shizhong immediately dismounted and knelt on one knee in greeting. "This general, Shizhong, greets your highness the crown prince." Prince Mo raised his hand slightly to have Shizhong rise. Then, his cold and sharp gaze shot towards the vassal prince of Nan's subordinates. The group of generals and soldiers led by old Jia and Niancheng all lowered their heads and knelt down. However, Niancheng's shifty gaze roved over Arbor's face, and a trace of amazement flitted across his eyes. Arbor tugged on the crown prince's hair and struggled to get him to let go. Then, she leaped onto the ground and quickly ran towards the prison carriage. Mo Lian helplessly glanced at his little wife. He raised his hand and released a burst of mystic energy, chopping off the copper lock on the prison carriage. The prison door opened, and Arbor extended her small hand. Everyone turned to look at her, thinking that she was going to help the two pitiful young ladies out of the prison carriage. However, that was actually the case. Slap! Arbor slapped one of the young ladies' head and reprimanded her as if she was scolding a child. "What are you crying for? All of you, shut up! Everyone, Useless things, getting angry at the sight of them. Why were this group of mermen always so weak? Every day, they would be captured by people. Every day, there would be people who wanted to kill them or cut them open to take their pearls and beautify them. All day long? Could it be that she had seen captured mermen before? Something flashed in Arbor's mind, but it was so fast that she couldn't catch it. Those sealed memories were like a fleeting view. Every time she wanted to take a closer look, there was nothing left. What a strange feeling! The little fellow blinked his eyes. Seeing the two girls hugging their heads and sobbing inside the prison carriage, he couldn't help but go up and slap the other girl's head. He shouted rudely, "Come down by yourself." Mo Lian's lips twitched. Although his Bao couldn't remember anything for the time being, her violent nature hadn't changed at all. The two mermaids shivered and hugged their heads as they walked down from the prison cart. Their frightened eyes kept moving back and forth on Arbor's body. With a shake of his hand, Arbor took out two coats from his inner world and threw them to the two of them. The two girls hurriedly received them and put them on while expressing their thanks repeatedly. Arbor turned and walked a few steps. When she turned back and saw that the two fools were still rooted to the ground, she couldn't help but shout at them, "Come here!" The two mermaids trembled slightly and hurriedly followed. However, they hadn't taken 2 steps when they saw Niancheng straighten his body halfway and reach out to block their path. "No! This is to be brought back to the vassal king of Nan's estate." "Niancheng!" Old merchant shouted at him, meaning for him to quickly shut up. Chapter 1166. Niancheng shut his mouth in annoyance, but his hand gesture was very obvious as he continued to block those two mermaids. A strange emotion surfaced in Arbor's mind. The long-lost anger that was missing from the 7 emotions and 6 desires had returned. Arbor angrily glared at those 2 submissive mermaids and roared at them again, "Come here! Everyone!" Why the hell did they feel that the little girl before them was inexplicably adorable? Those two mermaids immediately moved at Arbor's command and hastily trotted over. When they saw Nian Chong blocking their path, they also used all their strength to push him aside. Clip-clop, clip-clop, clip-clop. The two men dismounted from their horses when they were only a few steps apart. "Little junior sister, you're fine." Situi and Duanyu, who had rushed over after receiving the news, quickly walked toward Arbor. Mo Lien face-bombed exasperatedly. Sure enough, he saw his little fellow turn to glance at Duanyu and Situi before rolling her eyes and turning her face away. Duanyu, Mo Lien, why did Jojo roll her eyes at me? Duanyu simply didn't dare to believe his eyes. How many years had it been since she rolled her eyes at him? Ever since he suffered at her hands at Quartal Village's Hulun Mountain, they reconciled not long after. What was the meaning of this eye roll? Mo Lien simply didn't want to bother with him, but when she saw Situi looking over curiously, she explained dryly, "She doesn't even recognize me right now, so what do you think?" "What?" Duanyu looked at Mo Lien in shock before looking at the little fellow. "Little junior sister, you got skinnier. How did you get skinnier after going to the mystic realm? Now that you're back, hurry and have Prince Mo properly nourish your body." Situi was still nagging at the side, but Arbor didn't even look at him out of the corner of her eye. "Little junior sister, little junior sister?" Situi paced back and forth beside her and finally received an impatient look from the little fellow. So funny, who is this person? He was so long-winded that she had no idea what he was talking about. Situi clearly understood the meaning in the little fellow's eyes, and could only remain silent. However, Duanyu laughed out loud and pushed him away. "Go away. Let me." Mo Lien sneered. "Do you think she can recognize you just because you're here?" Duanyu arrived in front of Arbor in a single stride. He took out a small square box and opened it before handing it to her. "Look, this is my newly developed large-scale firearm, the 9 Thunder Jade Heavens. It's extremely powerful. I've tried it before. It's really fun. It's even more interesting than the core ravaging thunder. The fire it shoots out can bounce very far. If you call me, I'll give it to you and teach you how to play with it." Situi and Mo Lien both turned to look at him. Did this guy have any shame at all when he spoke like he was trying to trick a child? This 9 Thunder Jade Heavens was emerald green and round, and there was even a small emerald green bamboo tube that could be locked tightly beside it. It looked quite novel. Arbor glanced at that wooden box before reaching over and closing the lid with a bang. She silently snatched the small box from Duanyu's hands and silently stuffed it into her inner world. That small action was done smoothly, as if this 9 Thunder Jade Heavens belonged to her in the first place. Chapter 1167. Duanyu was taken aback and exclaimed in exasperation, "You haven't called me yet." Mo Lien, Situi couldn't resist bursting into laughter. "Don't be silly, I already said I don't know you. Prince Mo, may I ask why little junior sister doesn't know who you are? When will she recover? Is there a need to ask? It must be that punk from Beijing Manor's doing." Duanyu said without hesitation. He must have wanted to bring the little fellow back to Beijing Manor to hide her, but who knew that he would encounter us on the way? "That can't be, right?" Situi grumbled. Mo Lien and Duanyu both ignored him because they both happened to be thinking the same thing. No matter how quick-witted these two were, they absolutely wouldn't have thought that Miss Xiao was the one who courted disaster and caused today's situation. "All right, Jojo, let's go home first." Emolien bent down to extend her hand. Arbor looked at him seriously and corrected, cultivate. Right, cultivate. Let's go home and cultivate. Emolien nodded and waved at her with a grin. It was only then that Arbor placed her small hand in his. In the next instant, she felt her body lighten as she landed sideways on the horse and leaned into his embrace. Cultivate what? Duanyu glanced at the little fellow in confusion. How come he didn't know that Jojo was so diligent? There are so many things you don't know. The Crown Prince gave him a figure it out yourself look. He immediately praised his Bao. Our Jojo has been extremely diligent recently. Do you know, her current cultivation is almost catching up to her senior brother Situ. Situyi's eyes widened as he sneaked a glance at Arbor. Little junior sister, you're so awesome. Darling Xiao understood the word, awesome, and gave Situyi its under a look as she nodded. Situyi then chuckled and pointed at Arbor. Look, little junior sister is paying attention to me. What a clown! Moen and Duanyu both rolled their eyes at him. Prepare 2 horses for the 2 of them. Moen turned to Shizhong and ordered. Shizhong immediately cupped his fists and agreed. He ordered 2 of his subordinates to dismount and lead the horses to the 2 mermaids. The 2 mermaids hurriedly got on their horses and held the reins tightly. They stole a glance at Arbor. What are you looking at? Keep up! Arbor yelled at the 2 of them. He wanted to get angry whenever he saw them. Weakling, that the 2 women's bodies trembled slightly, but they quickly and obediently followed after him. Seeing this, Nian Chong hurriedly stood up and said, Please wait. Nian Chong. Old merchant pulled him back, but he couldn't stop his impulsive temper. Pa! A green vine whip abruptly darted out from Xiao Mu's sleeve and lashed at Nian Chong's shoulder without any room for objection. This sudden change caused everyone to raise their heads in shock. Their gazes changed slightly as they looked at her. How dare you! Arbor rebuked angrily, her face icy. The Crown Princess will accept these 2 women. Do you have any objections? Emolien's indifferent gaze swept across everyone present. The vassal prince of Nan's soldiers all lowered their heads under this intimidating pressure. None of them dared to object. Crown Princess? She was that vicious and merciless Crown Princess? A furious glint flitted across Nian Chong's eyes as he recalled what Princess Anam had once mentioned to him. His elder brother, Nian Kuei, seemed to have died tragically at the hands of this Crown Princess. Chapter 1168. This person's methods were extremely vicious. Just because Commandery Princess Hui and had a small conflict with her, she was willing to destroy a wisp of her brother's soul in order to murder Commandery Princess Hui and, causing the explosion to affect Commandery Princess Hui and. Nian Chong clutched the wound on his shoulder with one hand and braced himself to put on a righteous expression. Of course, the Crown Princess can have these 2 mermaids if she wants them. However, is it possible for Crown Prince Consort to promise this general that if this general takes out 2 shark pearls, please gift one to the vassal king consort of Nan so that our vassal prince can express filial piety to his mother? When the 2 mermaids heard this, they immediately looked at Arbor in horror. Could it be that the 2 of them escaped from the wolf's den and fell into the tiger's den again? Arbor glowered at Nian Chong, her almond-shaped eyes practically spitting fire. She was very angry, but she did not know why. Suddenly, a vine whip lashed out at that person's mouth. Nian Chang's pupils contracted upon seeing this, and he reflexively dodged to the side, avoiding that vine whip. But then, another vine whip swiftly landed on his arm, shattering the wrist guard on his arm in an instant. A glaring whip mark appeared on his tanned arm. It was so deep that bone could be seen, and blood spurted out. Old Merchant and the others all sucked in a cold breath. They were apprehensive about the little crown princess's ruthless methods and her frightening cultivation. "Hubby, kill him!" The young crown prince consort suddenly turned her small face around and shouted at Mo Lien in a huff. She had only lost some of her common sense due to her memories being blocked, but she was not truly stupid. It was clear at a glance who was showing her kindness and who was showing her malice. Duan Yu's mouth twitched, and he glared at Mo Lien beside him in displeasure. "You told her that you are her hubby? Is it not so?" Mo Lien cast him a glance before reaching out his large palm to rub the young crown prince consort's head soothingly. "Okay, let's kill him." He knew her too well and knew why she was angry. Nian Chong was really bold. He actually dared to use words against his little wife. His words were indirectly telling others that the reason the crown princess had saved the two mermaids was to take the mermaid pearls from their bodies. This was simply slander. Arbor was naturally angry. She didn't want the shark pearl. How could something like that be beautifying? If she wanted to beautify her looks, she could just eat the beautifying pills. She could make a big pot of them herself. Why would she need the shark pearls? The crown prince waved his hand, and a few nimble figures suddenly appeared beside Nian Chong, pressing him down onto the ground. Nian Chong cried out in pain. Only now did he reveal some fear in his heart. Nian Chong, Old Merchant and the rest looked over in shock. They hurriedly knelt a few steps forward and cupped their fists at Prince Mo, begging for mercy. "Your Highness, please calm down. Nian Chong is just a little impulsive. He doesn't disrespect the crown princess." "Oh? He doesn't have disrespect?" Mo Lien glanced at Nian Chong coldly. But why did this crown prince hear dissatisfaction and reprimand in his words? Nian Chong struggled hard and shouted, "Your Highness is wise. This general doesn't have such intentions. This general has followed the Lord Vassal Prince for many years and has fought all over the country. Not long ago, we even won a complete victory against Northern Qi. This general is loyal to the great king with a pure heart. The sun and moon can testify to this general's loyalty, and only the heavens can testify." Chapter 1169. This punk was reminding him that he had just returned to the capital after a victorious battle with the vassal prince of Henan. If he killed him on the streets, it would chill the soldiers' morale and might even cause the people's dissatisfaction. Mo Lien curled her lips and suddenly smiled. Although she had a smile on her face, her eyes flickered with an abnormally icy glint. "Let this monarch tell you something." Mo Lien's eyes flickered, and she sneered, "If this monarch wants you to die today, then you definitely won't be able to see tomorrow's sun." Raising his eyelids slightly, he nodded at the two secret guards in acknowledgement. The latter's sword suddenly slid across Nian Chong's neck so quickly that he didn't have any room to maneuver. His body slid heavily to the ground, and his eyes were wide open as he died with remaining grievances. On the side, Old Merchant and the others also felt a bone-chilling coldness rising from the soles of their feet. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly and could only sneak glances at the crown prince. The tens of millions of people on the streets all slowed their breathing and knelt there with their heads bowed, not even daring to look up. When His Highness the Crown Prince raged, corpses truly littered the ground. No one dared to face His Highness's wrath directly. Go, investigate this person's evil deeds and publicize it in the central plaza so that everyone knows, the Crown Prince ordered indifferently. Yes. Summon Censor Li and Censor Chen for this monarch. This monarch wants to submit a memorial to the great king and report the vassal prince of Nan for not managing his troops well. Everyone. As expected, the Crown Prince the Great was a vengeful person. The vassal prince of Nan had just returned to the capital, so he probably hadn't even warmed up his seat at the Great King's and was about to be reported by His Highness the Crown Prince. Duan Yu almost laughed out loud and turned his horse around. I didn't come here in vain today. He watched a pretty good show. Prince Mo glanced at Shizhong again. What are you spacing out for? Take these northern Qi prisoners of war to the north camp. If anyone dares to obstruct us, this monarch permits you to kill them. Yes, this general obeys. Shizhong's spirits were lifted. He immediately called for his subordinates to take over the prisoners in the hands of Old Merchant and the others, escorting them to the north camp outside the city. Let's return to the palace. Prince Mo narrowed his eyes and turned his horse to leave. After a long time, the petrified old merchant and the others on the street finally moved slightly and looked at each other in dismay. The crowd dispersed, and no one dared to look at the corpse on the ground. Although the vassal prince of Nan was quite formidable after coming back victorious, his subordinates couldn't be so rude and contradicting in front of His Highness the Crown Prince. To be executed by His Highness in a fit of anger, he could only blame his bad luck. Their Crown Prince was no ordinary person. Not to mention a mere vassal prince of Nan, perhaps even the venerable vassal king of Nan wouldn't dare to be so impudent in front of Her Highness. After the Crown Prince carried Arbor back to the palace, he first sent a message to the Qiao family to explain the situation and appease them. Then, he had someone bring Xiao Yao over to serve her. However, once the little girl arrived at this unfamiliar place, she looked left and right to find a cultivation spot. After searching for a long time, she glared at the Crown Prince accusingly. Okay, we'll go cultivate in a bit. Let's eat first. You'll only have the strength to properly cultivate after eating. My Jojo, you've lost so much weight from hunger. If I knew earlier, I wouldn't have let you go to the Mystic Beast Forest Mystic Realm to train in that damned place. Chapter 1170. Arbor glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. Husband? Mo Yen was overjoyed. He gave himself 10,000 likes in his heart. How could he have been so quick-witted that day? He had whispered into the little girl's ear, I'm your husband, I'm your husband. It had worked. This silly little girl probably thought that his name was Hubby. Ha ha ha. The little girl had been so obedient throughout the journey. She had called him hubby every time she opened her mouth. Hearing her made him happy and comfortable. Coming. Dinner is here. Xiao Yao directed a row of junior palace maids as they walked in with plates of dinner. As she busied herself with setting the table, she nagged, Miss, why have you lost so much weight? Have you been eating all this time? Arbor naturally ignored her. Her eyes were glued to the plates of food that were being brought in. Tap, tap, tap. The little girl strode towards the table. Her fair and tender little hand reached out towards a crispy roasted goose leg. Xiao Yao. Mo Yen gave her a look. Xiao Yao understood and turned around. She said to the junior palace maids, "You can leave first." "Yes." Xiao Yao turned around again and saw her little master gnawing on a roasted goose leg. She couldn't help but wipe the corners of her eyes. "How long has my miss been hungry?" She didn't even bother to pick up her chopsticks. She was so hungry that she just grabbed it with her bare hands. How pitiful. Arbor took 2 bites. Her eyes glanced at the braised pork shoulder on the plate next to her. Her little hand stealthily reached for it again. Emolian went forward and took her little hand. "Let's wash our hands first." As he spoke, he took the greasy roasted goose leg from her hand and pulled her to wash her hands. When they came back from washing, Arbor grunted at him. Her eyes looked meaningfully at a plate of prawns in the distance. Hence, Emolian carried that plate over and helped her grab the shrimp with his hands. As he peeled the shrimp to feed her, he asked absent-mindedly, "Chow Chow, do you still remember my name?" Arbor nodded vigorously and swallowed the prawn that he had peeled. "Husband." "That's right." Emolian went up to her with a smile and kissed her on the cheek. "Don't forget about it in the future." Arbor nodded obediently. Xiao Yao, who was watching from the side, rolled her eyes speechlessly. His Highness was too black-bellied, bullying their family's young miss for being so dim-witted. Previously, His Highness had only told her that Miss had been harmed by Ding Yun from Beijing Manor. Now that she had returned, she had forgotten a lot of things from the past. Looking at it now, it was true. "Your Highness, do you need chopsticks?" Xiao Yao handed over a pair of silver chopsticks and asked with a light cough. "I don't want it. Our Jojo likes to eat with her hands. I'll accompany her." Emolian waved his hand nonchalantly and caught a fish for her in passing, which she had been staring at the entire time. Xiao Yao was speechless. No, she had to keep a lookout outside. If Her Majesty the Queen came and saw this, she would be furious. Her son, such an outstanding and perfect son, was going crazy with his wife all day long. "Jojo, is it good?" Emolian saw that she was eating happily and couldn't help but feel happy. Xiaomu nodded and wiped her small hand on his sleeve while she was at it. Crown Prince Emo pursed his lips and said, "You wiped me all over with oil, so you have to bathe together with me in a bit." "Let's bathe together, okay, Jojo, Jojo, Jojo." Chapter 1171. Emolian blinked as she smiled at the little fellow. Xiaomu glanced at him and nodded her small head in confusion. His silly look was truly too amusing. Emolian hugged her and lowered his head, burying his face in her hair. His body trembled as he chuckled softly. When Huifeng, who was crouching on the roof, saw this, he involuntarily rolled his eyes and thought, "Your Highness, quickly pick up your moral integrity. Jojo is too oily, don't wipe it on my face." Emolian helplessly pulled down her small hand and wiped the little fellow's face with a brocade handkerchief. Suddenly, they heard Xiao Yao's earth-shattering voice outside the door. "Her Majesty the Queen has arrived. Commandery Princess En has also come." Xiao 11Z, who was standing next to the door, was nearly intimidated by Xiao Yao's loud voice. The Queen had been supported by Green Mammy all the way here. When she heard this, she paused and looked suspiciously at Xiao Yao, who was shouting at the top of her lungs. "Your master is inside, so why are you standing outside the door? Are you on the lookout?" Xiao Yao really wanted to slap herself. Why did she say that for no reason? She had to be on the lookout in case Her Majesty the Queen came. She really freaking came this time. The crisp sound of a plate clattering came from inside. Xiao 11, Z quickly turned around and ran inside with small, quick steps. He hastily curtsied and shouted, oh no, Your Highness, Her Majesty the Queen has come. So it's not good for this Empress to come? Empress Xiao glared at Xiao 11, Z sternly. Xiao 11, Z's legs turned to jelly as he crawled toward the Crown Prince's feet. This servant misspoke. 1 minute ago, when His Highness the Crown Prince, who was fooling around with his wife, heard Xiao Yao's shout, his hand trembled, and the prawn he was about to stuff into the little fellow's mouth almost fell to the ground. Darling Xiao hurriedly stuck out her small tongue and bit the prawn into her mouth. She chewed twice and swallowed it. The Crown Prince hurriedly took the handkerchief and hurriedly wiped his little wife's mouth and hands. Within a minute, he tidied himself up slightly and pulled his wife up. Queen Zhao crossed the tall threshold of the Eastern Palace's bedchamber in a short while and led a group of palace maids and nannies inside. At a glance, he saw his son greeting him with a grin. Mother, why are you here? Empress Xiao frowned slightly and glanced at her son. Moho heard that your little crown princess was found, so I came to see her. Mo Lian hurriedly pulled her hand behind her back and tugged at little blockhead's little hand. Arbor walked to his side in a daze and glanced at the group of women in front of him in confusion. She glanced over and felt that all the palace maids looked the same. Yihan was standing at the front of the row of royal maids beside Empress Xiao, retreating half a step to show her respect. Xiao Xiao, that child, also regarded Yihan as a royal maid, and her gaze brushed past her face. On the other hand, Yihan seized the opportunity to scrutinize her. With this look, a faint melancholy surfaced in her heart. This little crown princess in front of her looked a bit younger, but her looks were exceptionally refined. She couldn't compare to her. She couldn't compare at all. Jojo, this is Mother Queen. Her name is Mother Queen, so call her Mother Queen. The crown prince poked fun at his wife in a small voice. As a result, our dear Arbor stiffly called out to Empress Xiao, Mother Queen. Empress Xiao. Empress Xiao responded. Chapter 1172. Although this little fellow's tone was stiff, she had at least called her Royal Mother. Compared to that aloof, Your Majesty the Queen, with a stoic face, she was a bit more pleasing to the eye now. Xiao Yao, who was standing on the side like a candle, quickly lowered her head, her shoulders trembling slightly. Mo Lian turned his handsome face and winked at his wifey with a smile. Many thanks for Royal Mother's concern. Jojo is doing quite well. Due to her long seclusion in the Mystic Beast Forest's secret realm, she still needs to recuperate after coming back. After a few days, when her body is better, this son will bring Jojo to visit Grandmother and Royal Mother. Empress Xiao nodded upon hearing this. On the side, Yihan commented with a smile, I heard that Miss Xiao's party came out of the Mystic Beast Forest's secret realm early this time. I wonder what happened. The Crown Prince looked up and swept her an indifferent glance. Upon seeing this, Yihan's heart sank slightly, but she still maintained a smile as she gazed at the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Did Yihan say something wrong? The Crown Princess's title was personally conferred by Royal Father. Are you dissatisfied with Royal Father's decree by calling her Miss Xiao? Prince Mo asked with a smirk as he raised his eyebrows. Egan was startled, and she hastily knelt down to apologize. It was Egan who misspoke, Your Highness the Crown Prince. Egan did not mean to defy the great king's decree. That's good. Prince Emo nodded as he curled his lips coldly. Otherwise, this crown prince will mistakenly think that you are dissatisfied with the great king. Egan quickly protested while kneeling there in a cold sweat. Egan doesn't dare. Empress Xiao glanced at her before mediating with a smile. All right, Egan, get up. Crown Prince, you don't need to be so harsh on Egan. She is your grandmother's adopted granddaughter, so she can be considered half your younger sister. Emo Lien nodded noncommittally. The maidservant Su hurriedly ran 2 steps forward with a distressed expression on her face. She bent down and helped her young miss up. The master and servant looked at each other and suppressed the faint light in their eyes. Your Highness, Empress Xiao chuckled as she took 2 steps forward and affectionately held her eldest son's hand. The crown prince was caught by Empress Xiao before he could retract his hand. As soon as he pulled, his hand was covered in grease. The crown prince's mouth twitched slightly, and he hurriedly looked at Empress Xiao, who had a strange expression on her face. He laughed dryly and said, Royal Mother, just now, a plate fell. My hands were covered in oil, and I didn't have time to tell Imperial Mother. If the Queen was not present, Xiao Yao would have laughed out loud. His Highness must be stupefied right now. Just now, when he was fooling around with Miss, he was so happy. You child, you're already so old, yet you still don't know how to take care of yourself. Empress Xiao cast a glance behind her. The green mammy immediately led people forward with a basin of water and a clean towel. After Empress Xiao personally wrung a towel to wipe her son's hands, Prince Emo instantly felt a bit awkward. He was already so old, yet he still needed his mother to wipe his hands for him. He hastily tugged at his esteemed mother and coughed lightly, saying, Mother, I'm not a child, so I can do it myself. Empress Xiao couldn't resist laughing as she said, In Mother's eyes, you will still be Mother's child even when you're 80 years old. But now that I think about it, when you were 3 years old, you weren't even as tall as a clothes rack, yet you wanted to personally put on clothes for yourself. In the end, you were so busy that the entire clothes rack collapsed and got buried by a pile of clothes. Chapter 1173. Some of the palace maids behind the queen couldn't hold back and hurriedly coughed to cover their stifled laughter. Prince Emo immediately begged for mercy. Mother, don't talk about it anymore. His wife was still here, he wanted to save face. Empress Xiao pursed her lips and laughed. But when you were young, there were so many happy things. Mother remembers that when you were 7 years old, you went hunting with your father. In the end, you encountered a super big bear that chased after your father. You were still young then and chased after the big bear with a small bough on your back. In the end, the bear didn't catch up and your father was saved by the guards. When he turned around and realized that he had lost you, he was so anxious. Prince Emo laughed awkwardly and hurriedly tugged at his mother's sleeve. Mother, don't talk about it anymore. Okay, Mother won't talk about it anymore. Empress Xiao sighed softly. After washing her son's hands, she looked at him lovingly. In the blink of an eye, you're already so big and about to get married. Mother and son looked at each other and smiled. At this moment, the little crown princess pattered over and tugged hard at the queen's sleeve. Imperial Mother, who's the big bear? Everyone, Prince Mo's mouth twitched. He held back his laughter and tugged at the little fellow's hand. Imperial Mother, Jojo is a little muddle-headed from cultivating these 2 days. Empress Xiao looked at her speechlessly. When Arbor heard the 2 words cultivating, she immediately looked up at the Crown Prince like a spring that had been wound up. Husband. The cultivation ground. Okay. The Crown Prince hurriedly nodded at her and turned to Empress Xiao. Imperial Mother, Jojo is about to break through in the next few days. I'll bring her to the cultivation ground first. Empress Xiao nodded and then nagged, it's less than 2 months until your wedding. Don't just cultivate all the time. See what you're lacking and remember to make up for it in time. Your wedding is a big event, don't neglect it. Prince Mo hurriedly nodded. All right, you guys should rest early too. It was only then that Empress Xiao called out to Yi Hen and led her outside. Mother, take care. Mo Lien squeezed the little fellow's little hand. Arbor glanced at him and stiffly called out, Mother, take care. It was only after Queen Zhao and her entourage had exited the Eastern Palace's doorstep that Crown Prince Mo couldn't resist chortling. He pulled that little fellow into his arms and pinched her small cheeks. Xiao Yao, on the other hand, couldn't help but squat on the ground and laugh. Arbor looked at Mo Lien with a serious expression. Husband, cultivate. Mo Lien was overjoyed. She held her little hand and nodded. Let's go. I'll take you to that cultivation area. He brought her into the back room of the bedchamber. His palm swept across a row of candles, and a stone door on the wall suddenly opened. Xiaomu immediately sensed the dense mystic energy enveloping her from all directions, and her small face immediately smoothed out. Mo Lien didn't let go of her and lowered his head to rub against her head. Cultivate for the night. Come out for breakfast tomorrow morning, okay? No. Arbor immediately spread her arms and vetoed his words. I want it even if you don't want it. Mo Lien lifted her up and gazed into her eyes as he said, we'll bathe together tonight, and we'll eat breakfast together tomorrow morning. Choose one. Xiao Yao. Where's your Highness's face? Arbor scratched her little head. Let's eat breakfast then. She kept feeling that this man's eyes seemed to be shining when he said, bathe together tonight. It wasn't anything good. Chapter 1174. Mo Lien chuckled and nodded, leaving Arbor alone in the cultivation room. Then let's make an appointment. Xiaomu helplessly nodded her head. It was so strange. This person kept hindering her cultivation, but why did she especially not want to slap him to death? Jojo. Mo Lien poked her head in from outside the cultivation room and smiled at her with narrowed eyes. See you tomorrow. Arbor raised her small hand and reflexively shook her small paw. Only then did Mo Lien restrain himself from pouncing over and rubbing her in his arms again. This little fellow was seriously adorable to death. She really wanted to hug her like this. Even if they didn't do anything and just chatted for the entire night, it would also be good. She didn't want to let go at all. What was she cultivating for? It was as if this little rascal had joined a cult, talking about cultivating all day long. Prince Mo left the secret room with a melancholic expression. When he returned to his bedchamber, his gaze involuntarily kept looking in the direction of the secret room. His Jojo had returned. How wonderful! His pitiful heart that had been hanging high in the air finally seemed to land on solid ground, stabilizing his mind. Mylien's section Greycaw, the vassal king of an Nan's estate in the Mo kingdom capital. The gold-gilded plaque on a black background flickered under the illumination of the sunset, dignified and solemn. The grand doors opened with a rumble. A group of people supported an abnormally thin woman with slightly protruding cheeks. She had no flesh on her face, and her body was abnormally thin. That woman was not yet 50 years old, and her harsh and crafty face was currently covered in a gratified smile. Two nannies supported the woman on both sides. Their hair was coiled up, and they were dressed in servant attire. A man in his 50s stood next to them. He was dressed in a purple-gold robe, and his hair and beard were several inches long. They were the old vassal king of an Nan and his vassal king consort Wu Hongma. The husband and wife exchanged a glance and nodded with a smile. Then, they looked forward at the same time with expectant expressions. "He's coming, he's coming. Your Highness, Your Highness, Your Highness, Your Highness, Your Highness is back, he's back." A green-clothed servant dashed towards the entrance of the mansion and shouted in high spirits. "Quick, quick, help me over there." Wu Hongma couldn't restrain her joy as she grabbed the hands of the two mamas and called out, "Princess Consort, don't worry. His Highness will come to see you soon." A mama smiled and held her hand. Under everyone's expectant gazes, the three fast horses galloped from afar to near at full speed. A black figure in the middle lightly dismounted from his horse and tossed the spear in his hand to the soldier behind him. The vassal prince of an Nan, Chofu, hurried forward and prostrated himself in front of the old vassal king of an Nan and the vassal king consort with a tall and straight posture. "What ability does this child have to trouble father and mother to personally welcome me?" Get up, quickly get up." Princess Anam excitedly walked down the stairs and hurriedly helped him up. She was so excited that her hands trembled as she caressed her son's handsome face. She smiled happily and said, "Mother has been waiting for you for a long time. Finally, you have returned home. Has lost weight, but he has become stronger." "Mother." The vassal prince of an Nan, Chofu, smiled as he supported Princess Anam. Then, he turned to look at the smiling vassal king of an Nan. Greets father. "It's good that you're back, it's good that you're back." The old vassal king of an Nan stroked his beard and chuckled. Princess Anam nodded and gently gazed at her son. You've had a long journey. It must have been hard on you. Let's talk after we return. And then, your mother is right. Let's return home first. We cooked many of your favorite dishes to welcome you back. Come in." The vassal king of an Nan stroked his beard and chuckled. Chapter 1175. "Thank you, father." "Thank you, mother." Chofu nodded and supported his mother, Princess Anam, into the estate. The whole family had a harmonious reunion dinner. The father and son pair never mentioned to Princess Anam that the crown prince had lodged a complaint against the vassal prince of an Nan. Princess Anam drank 2 more cups because of her son's return, and the alcohol got to her head, so she had someone help her back to her room first. What do you plan to do about that matter?" After seeing his old wife leave, the vassal prince of an Nan withdrew his smile and looked at his son worriedly. "Don't worry, father. I've already discussed this matter with Mr. Lu and have a preliminary countermeasure." "That's good." The vassal prince of an Nan shook his head and sighed. "I understand the great king very well. He's easily swayed. The matter of your lax management of the army isn't a big deal, but if the great king hears 3 or more people mentioning your mistake, he'll definitely have an opinion of you. This matter might not be resolved peacefully. After all, those imperial censors were like mad dogs that had bitten his son and might not let go easily. Moreover, His Highness the Crown Prince stood behind these imperial censors. Don't worry, Father. This son knows what to do. The vassal prince of Nan nodded solemnly and raised his cup to pat his shoulder with a smile. Even if the great king temporarily wants you to hand over the stalwart tiger troops Commander Tally, don't refuse and just give it to him. If you're idle at home, you can also accompany your mother more. This son understands. Chou Fu lowered his head, but a faint trace of unwillingness flitted across his eyes. He had roped in the stalwart tiger troop with great difficulty, so how could he just give them away like this? Night, in the vassal prince of Nan's courtyard. Slap! A thin piece of paper was pressed down by someone. His Highness the Crown Prince petitioned the great king to punish the vassal prince for lax management of the army, a military advisor beside him said with a worried expression. In less than an hour, that person had already listed out more than a dozen of Nian Chang's crimes and posted them in the central square, announcing them to the public. Mr. Liu, what do you think of this matter? Crown Prince Chou's stern face was taut as he turned to look at the middle-aged military advisor. Mr. Liu shook his head. His Highness the Crown Prince clearly wants to use this opportunity to suppress the Crown Prince. If we don't handle this matter well, not only will our expedition to northern Qi be a failure, we might even be accused of not managing the army strictly. Damn it, I think that His Highness the Crown Prince is deliberately targeting us. A burly general said angrily, the heir led us through dangerous situations and fought for the country. Not only did he return with no merit, but he was even punished. How can I accept this? That's right. Nian Chong did rob a few good women and robbed some money, but those small mistakes are nothing compared to the merits he has made. Shut up. Mr. Liu glared at them angrily and said, look at yourselves. You've already left the stronghold for many years, but you still carry a trace of a bandit aura that's hard to change. Isn't this just handing over your weaknesses for others to use against you? Mr. Liu said, all right, you don't need to meddle in this matter. Let me discuss with the heir and see how to resolve this. All of you return to rest first. This is the Mo Kingdom capital, so all of you had better pay attention and abide by the rules. Don't make any more mistakes and let others catch you in your pigtails. Mr. Liu waved his hand, dismissing those uncouth fellows. Chapter 1176. Seeing that they had all left, Mr. Liu then looked towards the displeased Lord Vassal Prince and sighed softly. This matter was reported to Lord Vassal Prince by the Crown Prince and several imperial censors, so the great king will definitely attach great importance to it. I know. Chou Fu coldly said, he beheaded a junior general by my side on the street to give me a show of strength and a warning. He wants to tell me that as long as he wants to, there's no one he can't behead. The vassal prince of Nan sneered. The crown prince is powerful, so it's inappropriate for us to directly clash with him. Mr. Liu sighed and said, I hope Lord Vassal Prince will think thrice before doing anything. Chou Fu nodded. I will have to trouble Mr. Liu to think of a strategy for this matter. Mr. Liu nodded. Let me go back and think for a night before informing Lord Vassal Prince tomorrow. Suddenly hearing his mother's voice from outside the door, Chofu waved his hand to dismiss Mr. Lu. Princess Anam Wu Hongma personally walked in with a bowl of ginseng soup and handed it to her son. She looked at him with heartache and said, "Fu, you've lost a lot of weight. The campaign must have been very tiring." "It wasn't tiring, mother." Chofu pulled his mother to sit down and looked at her seriously. "I've already heard about younger sister's matter, but I haven't figured out the specifics. Can mother tell me the details?" At the mention of Hui En, Princess Anam couldn't help but burst into tears. She grabbed her son's hand and sobbed, "Fu, you have to avenge your younger sister. Your younger sister truly died too tragically." Wu Hongma gnashed her teeth at the mention of Hui En. "It's all that crown princess's fault. It was that slut who harmed my daughter." Thus, she carefully recounted the entire incident to Chofu from beginning to end. When she reached the part where the crown princess didn't hesitate to crush Nian Kuei's soul in order to kill Hui En, Wu Hongma burst into tears again. "That slut wouldn't even let off your disfigured younger sister. When we met in Xixia Valley, she actually despicably injured your younger sister again during the competition. She used some kind of witchcraft to bewitch His Highness the Crown Prince and actually instigated His Highness to burn your heavily injured younger sister to death. Ah, my Hui En, my poor daughter. You're going to die so miserably. I want to avenge your sister. I want to poison that damned crown princess. I want to poison her to death." Who would have thought that she was a person who was proficient in medicine? Not only did she see through me, she even arrested your cousin Xiaosu and locked her up in prison for a whole month. Thinking of this, Wu Hongma couldn't help but feel sad. She cried for a while. "Your cousin was finally released from prison 2 days ago. But, is she still human? You didn't see it. Your cousin is so skinny, she's so pitiful. I really don't have the face to face your uncle anymore. I'm the one who harmed Xiaosu. It's me. Mother." Chofu reached out to hold his mother's shoulder and hurriedly comforted her, "Don't be sad. I'll find a way to resolve this matter." A cold glint flitted across Chofu's eyes. "Although I didn't see that crown princess today, I did experience her vicious methods. According to my subordinate's replies, if it weren't for the fact that the crown princess wholeheartedly wanted to kill Nian Chong, the crown prince probably wouldn't have made a move against Nian Chong. He also wouldn't have thought of taking advantage of the situation to accuse me. I said that she's a demoness who brings disaster to the country and the people." His Highness the Crown Prince was captivated by her beauty, Wu Hongma fiercely said. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.